What's up, guys? We got a big one for you today. World famous crew chief to the stars, the one and only John Salemi is going to join us in just a few short minutes. Then at about 2:45, about 45 minutes from now, roughly, we will be joined by Australian drag racing superstar Paul Mouhayet. We got a ton of stuff for you guys on deck today. Let's do this thing. Listen, I've never had any problem expressing my opinions, but what we're doing here is bigger than that. These are conversations that need to be had in an unfiltered way. Drag racing's all I've ever done. It's all I care to do. I respect the history, I appreciate how far we've come, but I want more for this sport, and I'll fight for it. It's uncut, it's unfiltered. This is the show of shows. The biggest names in drag racing. No holds barred. This is the great American motorsport, drag racing. Prove me wrong. I'll wait. Hey gang, Wes Buck here, Drag Illustrated Magazine, checking in. It is Wednesday, March 19th, 2025. Hope you're doing well out there. Of course, we can't do this out without all of y'all. So please take a second, click like, click subscribe, join the movement here. That is this exciting time for the sport of drag racing. We got a hell of a show for you guys lined up today. As I mentioned in the intro, we'll be joined in just a few short minutes by John Salemi, world-renowned tuner and crew chief, as well as Paul Mouhayet, going to talk to us a little bit about the Australian drag racing scene and some of his experience at the World Series of Pro Mod. But before we get into our guests, I got to introduce my co-hosts here on the show, JT Hudson, Mike Carpenter. What's up, boys? Good to be back. You excited to be back in the saddle? Mike, you remember how to do this? Well, fuck. I guess we got John on here already. Let's give it up. John, what's going on, buddy? I was going to give you a big, I was going to give you a big
rolling right
intro,
into it with him. Yeah,
but we're rolling right into it. What's up, guys? Everybody well?
Yeah. How about you guys?
Man,
yeah, recovering. Still recovering, right, John?
To be totally honest with you. Still recovering. How are things in Buffalo, New York, man? Is it what's the weather like up there right now?
Today is like one of those days. It's like 72 degrees outside, not a cloud in the sky. Like if Empire Dragway was open, we'd be making some rips today.
That's awesome,
it's
man.
It's actually beautiful. So
well, good deal, dude. What's life like for those that don't know? We go way back with John Salemi. We've been doing things together and in the magazine, the various places you've raced for what seems like forever, damn near since the very beginning. I was writing stories about you and your brothers and everything that you guys have done in the sport of drag racing. But in recent months and actually the last few years, you've really established yourself as kind of a figurehead down at Bradenton Motorsports Park during these big money off-season races. Tuned Steve King to the winner's circle at the World Series of Pro Mod. Melanie won the second chance race in 2023. And then Derek Ward, of course, last year with his triumphant win over Jim Halsey in the final of the World Series of Pro Mod. What is it, man? I mean, you seem to have a handle on what's going on down there at Bradenton Motorsports Park.
I'm glad it looks like that from the outside. Oh, those races, I mean, it's like more than anything, it's a survival of the fittest type of thing. You don't have to be the fastest car, but you got to make laps that go A to B time after time after time and be able to systematically move into a tune-up that works for all the conditions, because that racetrack really seems to change when the sun hits it and when the sun comes off of it. So I don't know. My brother's been dragging me down to Bradenton since probably, I think we went there the first time with our car when Mike Stewicki was driving it, maybe 2005-ish. And I don't think there's been very many years that I haven't been there since then. But yeah, it's a challenge. The races they're high pressure. They are very, very long and drawn out because you have a bunch of testing, and it's not like you can't it's not like you can go there and not do the testing, because then you're behind because you don't know the characteristics of what's coming for you. So we preach in our pit and in our customers' pits that it's a game of surviving, and very fortunate for the last 2 years that somehow with our customers' cars, we've come up on the top and ended up in the winner's circle. It's been wham. What moments there's right now in our pro mod world. That's probably one of the biggest things you can do. And fortunately, the resolution tuned, MSR powered, G-force built cars have been on top for the last 2 years. So we might have not been where we wanted to be on the qualifying sheet, but qualifying doesn't mean you win the race. So Eddie Whalen's beat that into me over the last couple years because I was always so hot on being the quickest car out there, and I had to prove that my stuff was to the front of the sheet, and I was also trying to build a brand, right? So that's
plus once you get in, once you're in with the chip draw,
right?
I mean, it means getting in is the name of the game, and then once it's all about the chip draw from that point. But that's an interesting perspective. I mean, just like talking about your signature tuning style. So I mean, you're saying that typically you're a home run hitter, you're swinging for the fences, you're trying to go number one, but you've had to adjust into more of a marathon race day mindset.
Yeah, and some of the conditions at Bradenton weren't falling into my particular tuning style or the technology that I use and stuff like that. So we were brainstorming between Jim, Evan, and Eddie and I, and of course what Melanie feels in the car and what my other drivers and on the other teams feel. And you just try to compile all that information together and come back at it. And I know that, I should have been 60 foot and 9.0s out there, but I was a 920 car and I could see where it was faltering and why it was faltering. But damned in hell if I could make it do what it was supposed to do. And then first round of World Series comes up, I'm the first pair out there. The track is more to my style of tuning. It goes 907, right? So I knew it was there. So it was almost calming to me, but it's still very stressful and causes anxiety because you can't technically do what you're trying to do and what you want it to do. And it's, man, I don't know. I guess we all hold ourselves at a really high standard to be perfectionists in this game, no matter whether you're doing media, design work, or technical work, or putting these cars together or whatnot. And you just, everybody is so damn good that you got to be so damn good. And I tell people all the time, oh, it must be so awesome. You must have so much fun going on vacation every time you go to race. And I'm like, just come with me one time and understand what goes on. I'll show you how. Don't get me wrong, it's the greatest thing ever, but it's not really fun.
A lot of work, yeah. And some weekends more than others, right?
Stressful when you hold yourself at a high regard to do as well as you want to do, and you got people spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, and they want success, and the pressure's on, and here we go, right?
For you, John, how much is that chip draw, the lane choice for you? Is it a big deal for you, or I mean, at BMP, a lot of times lanes are
the right lane. The right lane is bumpier,
so
that's kind of a one. If I had to pick a lane, I would, in the starting line situation where the coverage of rubber was the same, I would definitely go in the left lane. Especially if you get out of the groove of the right lane, it's even more bumpy. So I tried to stay away from it when I needed to, but I went number 3 qualifier, and we were the quickest blower car at the Snowbirds and went 59 in the right lane. So, and it's
it seems like it comes around or it changes. It's like the left is favored early in the day and at night, but then it's second round of eliminations, third round, depending on the sun or cloud cover, the right lane tends to come in. And I don't really know how to explain that. Maybe you could a little bit, but it seems like when conditions are awesome and everything is equal, like you're saying, you want the left, but then there are times during the day, there are eliminations where the right seems to come around a little bit better.
Yeah, it's just kind of what happens with situational stuff. And that's what these races, really nothing means anything until that moment, that time when you stage those cars. It's first of all, it's who lets go first. And then it's I'll say who makes it to the end. And then it's like, who runs quicker or faster?
Yeah. I think that's fair. I mean, and it's like, and I sense that you can sense that like level of anticipation and like the nerves and anxiety that exist around every individual happening, because like you really need to make the absolute most of every opportunity you get up there on the starting line at these events. And that's, I mean, what generates that atmosphere that we're going for is that it all means so much. And like, this may be the shot, this may be where you need to make your move. And
Yep.
it's a really cool thing to see how it has already evolved like quite a bit in just a few short years. I mean, we were going over some of these stats last week that, I mean, hell, most of the people that qualified in 2023 wouldn't have qualified this year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Crazy.
Like it's evolved that much.
I think it was something like Tommy Franklin's run. He was number 32 this year. I think would have put him something crazy like second or third in 2024.
We never qualified for this race with Melanie's car. This was the first time.
It's so crazy, man. I mean, and that,
even that
like,
is
you
wild.
talk about Melanie, Salemi, and what you guys have done in PDRA and pretty much everywhere you go. Anytime there's been a big money race, you guys have done well in Norwalk. You've done well in Bradenton. I mean, you've had considerable success, and to even think about uttering the words Melanie just qualified for the first time this year is kind of incredible to think about. To take us through kind of like you're managing a lot of things at the racetrack. So you've got, you know, various customer cars. You have your own shop car with Melanie behind the wheel, who's your wife. You know, I mean, it's like a big, your son's tuning on all these cars. Like, take us through like kind of just the overall process of like what your day looks like. Are you, I mean, I know you've got to spread yourself around as much as you can, and you want to take care of your customers above all else. So like, what's that challenge like?
Yeah, I wish you could clone. I wish I could clone myself at those moments, because there's a great opportunity for more business out there. As we get deeper into these situations with, you know, the Winter Series and the popularity of the PDRA and these big money 8th mile races popping up, and NHRA's Pro Mod deal getting more, you know, traction and groundwork. And it's just a shame that there's not, generally in the world right now, even with talking to manufacturers, there's not enough people that want to actually work and do things and get up in the morning and feel good about going to work. But, you know, there's a ton of preparation before you even get to the track. And as a young kid, coming to the racetrack, there was always a race car in my life. My oldest brother, Jim, and there's 5 of us brothers. Like, there's 17 years difference between Jim and I, and Jim always had a race car from when I was a little kid. So I've been around race cars my whole life. And there was always nights to go to the shop and work on the race car, because without working on the race car and doing all the stuff that you need to do to it during the week before the race, your chances of winning on race day aren't as well. So he's embedded, you know, perfection of preparation, just getting it done and to its fullest. And, you know, when he was racing with Mike, you know, before, when I was a teenager in my early 20s and I was gone on the road playing music for a lot of those years, they were really suffering and learning the Pro Mod game. And fortunately for me, when I was done playing music and making records and stuff like that, we really hit the ground running when I came in to do the race car thing full time. And it's blossomed for all of us. And, you know, between Mike and Jim and all the people, you know, at the shop, it's so cliche, and I hate when you have to say it, but like, it's really what builds the program. And from building the cars at G-Force to Mike's building the engines, to now it's Evan and Jim prepping the cars, and Melanie take care of all the logistics, and, you know, Eddie coming to the racetrack, and Eddie, you know, supporting us in the ways where he really brought us to the next level on what kind of equipment we were running. And that's when we really spiked. And, you know, Melanie started doing really well. And that was kind of like the final cap to build a brand, which, you know, it takes so many people, it takes so much effort and so much concentration from everybody. And that's the biggest thing that I fight at the racetrack is I have a lot of customers, and we have a lot of customers as our brand, let's call it, between the 3 companies. And you know, Evan is coming of age and really helping me with that. But that's the thing I struggle with the most, because I want to selfishly spend all the time on my car and nitpick it and make it great and so on and so forth. And you don't have the time to do that. And Evan has really filled in that role for me with Melanie's car in many different ways, not only the tuning side of it, but he does all the preparation on it now, loads it. And I mean, does everything. He's driving the truck with me. And so he's a massive part of this whole deal. And the concentration, back to that, you gotta, these cars are very complex, and it takes, for them to be great, it takes a great level of concentration. You can go out there, you know, and run 370 to 365 pretty easy, but to go from 365 to 357 is an enormous amount of effort, both physically and mentally, from everybody, from the driver to the tuners to the crew people, and nothing can be missed. And like the amount of stuff we pay attention to these days comparatively to when you know, we started doing this kind of stuff, like, oh, that didn't matter, that's pro stock stuff, it none of it makes a difference. Well, actually, all of it makes a difference, and it's all about concentrating and managing your variables.
I was wondering, like, because that, as somebody who has seen this, and like you were really young when you got involved in drag racing, the evolution of tuning these cars, I'd love to hear you touch on some of that, because that's something that we really have seen, is that it's like, I remember all those same conversations where I didn't hardly know 20 years ago, I didn't know a pro mod guy that was making 4-link changes. You know what I mean? Or, I mean, it was, that shit may as well have been welded solid. You know, and then shock technology comes along, and
we did weld them in solid back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, I don't doubt it, man.
Yeah,
and because those were just not part of the things that you changed. You know, it was really limited. I was around a lot of crew chiefs there in the early to mid 2000s that like had this playbook that they never got outside of. Like, this is exactly where we run the car, whether it's a wheel speed number, fuel number, timing. This is what we do every time, and we're not gonna. And what's this whole evolution been like, comparing and contrasting, like, to back in those early days with Mike Stowicki and all the things that have come along since then? Like, what's that evolution looked like?
Man, how do you even, like, there isn't one aspect of the sport that has not been evolutionized to crazy levels. And I think I'm not super into a ton of other, like, classes and stuff like that. Not that I don't follow all of drag racing, but I think the amount of gains per class is really escalated within the pro mod contingent, more so than any other class in racing. Like the nitro cars, I think it's there, but like, you know, NHRA keeps the clamps on them so they don't go too fast. We're still like, we can do, like, yeah, there's an idea, or there's a new this or the new that, or like, think about the track prep, like IHRA, height of IHRA Pro Mod, 58 cars at Rockingham. Like, there was a flat drag, and like, I don't even remember what the sprayer looked like, or was there even a sprayer? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. Not. I don't remember seeing it at all. Like,
you know, like, Mike,
they prepped it in the morning. They prepped it in the morning, and then that was it for the rest of the day.
Like, you were there, like, you were racing with your dad when I was with Jim and Mike there. You know what I mean? Like, and like, I don't remember any of that. I remember walking on Rockingham after the rotator went on it, and I was like, man, this is like really starting to pull my feet. You could probably go really fast now.
The shoe twist. Like, that's all you had was the shoe twist.
Yes. I mean, to this $6,000 keg machine that, like, if you don't have it and get a number on what the track is doing, like, you're behind. Like, and then it's like the engine, the supercharger, the chassis, the shocks, the tire technology. Like, I mean, we got freaking, I know it's cliche, but like carbon fiber wheelie bars. Like, who the hell would have thought of that 10 years ago or 20 years ago? Because they're probably there around for 10 years now. But like, you know, we worry about eighths and quarter inches of ride height. Like,
all the sensors. That's something too. Like, all the sensors on everything, and you're monitoring all these things that we never even had. Oh, lost them. That we never even had an idea of monitoring. And when he comes back,
like, the next question I was going to ask him is, like, at what point, or do you get to a point Mike, where it's like information overload? Because it seems like you see some people, like I know racers that have told me like, I'd rather not race than have to learn how to use EFI or learn how to use some new thing. Right.
Well,
and I wonder,
there is that for sure. And I was going to ask John, and when he comes back, we will well, there he is. So we will ask him now. Oh,
he's back.
What's up? Somebody called you.
Sorry about that.
You're good.
Somebody called you and said, "Hey, dude, I saw you on. I'm seeing you on the Wes Buck Show right now."
I thought I shut that off, Wes. I guess I didn't do a good enough job.
You're good, bro.
It happens almost every time. I was going to ask you. We're talking about how like pro mod is still, I guess, in your view, like the Wild West, or we're still evolving to where you can go quicker and faster. But yet it seems like we're rapidly losing that. And we're by technology and all these things in these tight fields, the rules, trying to balance the parity of all these combinations, all this stuff. We are kind of tightening everything up to where we're getting to like putting the clamps on it. Like you were saying about nitro. I wouldn't say that we're capping it from a point of ultimately going too quick or what is that ultimate number of, okay, this is too quick for a pro mod, but it does seem like everything is getting so tight and so bunched up, and there's such small margin for error that we are kind of entering that era. That's for me, like looking at the Winter Series and looking at the fields, looking at the numbers, the rules, all these things, it feels like we're moving in that direction pretty quickly. And like, where do we go from here, and how do we maintain that outlaw personality that pro mods always had while balancing all these other things that we've just talked about?
It's crazy. I say all the time, or I think all the time, I'm like, this is the best class in drag racing, but it's the most bullshit class in drag racing with all the rules, right? Like, I hate it. I wish you could I wish it could be as exciting with, all right, it's this with that at this weight, and here's your rule set, and boom, it's done, and be as exciting, but you'll never have it. So, like, I just shut it out and carry on and do what you got to do. But it's true, and it's done everybody at hand has done a great job in it, because making the field as competitive as it is the excitement. It is the package. It is the sale of the entertainment, in my estimation. You can't slip up ever. Like, you go into even at PDRA now, like the last 2 or 3 years, probably since 22, 23-ish, first round is no different than the final round. And it was the same at all these Winter Series races and the Winter Series races last year. I know they weren't all together as one, but it's same concept, right? Like, first round, you've got to have your shit together, no differently than the final, and anybody you're coming up against can slap you around. And there's like an aura of certain people that you gear up for even more, but that's when you got to watch the guy that's coming from the bottom, because he's going to throw a hook at you and knock you out, right? So there is no room for error. And that's back to my telling you that, yeah, it's not fun where you're in control and you're gonna, I'm gonna like clean this field, because like my driver can let go and I can put an ET up on the board, right? It's like, that don't mean shit anymore. It's like, it's game on no matter what. Like, honestly, we use these races during the winter to test new things, and like, I made some radical changes in the race car for US Streets and World Series, and we stuck with them. And for lack of experience with those products, we didn't run as good as we normally would run. But I was like, you know what? It really doesn't matter, because if Melanie lets go and we go A to B, what do you do, right? Like, you're either gonna win or you're gonna lose, and that's what it is. And it doesn't matter if you go out there and you go 359 and the other guy goes 363, because that's the time you'll be 50 on the tree and he's 001 and you lose, right? So it was a good time to do some of that stuff. And man, it's you can't you have to learn how to harbor those emotions as a professional, I guess you could say. And once you can harbor those emotions and calm yourself and slow your brain down, I think when you become great or excellent at your craft. And that's for everybody on the team. It's not just me, it's not just Melanie. It's everybody to like, and there's so many things to remember. Like I'll walk out and like have not even thought about the weight balance, and Eddie will look at me and goes, what are we doing with the weight? I'm like, oh damn it. Like, yeah, let me go back in and look at the ride height sensor and see what the front end did on that last run, and then I'll make a weight calls, and then you go back and you're in the lanes taking 5-pound pucks and moving them from the front to the back or vice versa, or putting them in the middle, blah, 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 right? And, turning the struts a quarter of an inch because the front end was too high in the air or too low or whatever it may be, right? So, like, it's crazy. It's intense. And anybody that comes from the normal world and comes to hang out with us and just think, like, we go down the racetrack and you just, like, it's, right? Like, they're like, oh, my God, I could have never even, like, dreamed about, like, it was this technical. Right.
It's so complicated. Like, how much do you think technology? Okay, well, we go. Okay, there. What's up, CWB? Appreciate you tuning in. Remember, if you're watching along on YouTube, remember to subscribe to the channel and join us here so you don't miss any of the content we got coming your way. We got a bunch of cool shit coming out this spring and summer. But anyways, I was going to ask, like, at how much is it a good thing? Like, does it make the process to enter this space? Like, so say you win the lottery and you want to go pro mod racing. It's obviously more competitive and more difficult than it's ever been. But because of all the better parts, better pieces, better chassis, better everything, all these electronics, does it make the pathway to success or like getting, I mean, do you think it's easier to get involved in pro mod now than it was back in those days when it was a little bit more, everybody's building their own thing, everything's unique, everything's one off?
It is 100% easier these days. There's a package and that's what you sell, right? You sell your package, and then along with that comes your personality. And
I wonder if people will just keep calling him.
It's my brother. He knows I'm on the show and he keeps calling me. It's 100% easier. You have CNC built products. You have, that are exactly the same every time in all aspects of it, from the engine to the car. And now the latest bodies are done off of a CNC mold. Like, we're putting a new Synergy C7 Camaro or Corvette together, and it's like, you can't imagine how this thing fits. Like, we've never had a body like it before in our lives. And like, you don't even have to like make anything match. It's all like folded.
I remember like horror stories about, but like, it's so funny. Like, you'd get a body from anybody. And this isn't like firing shots, and you'd be cutting it in half, what I mean? Like literally weeks and weeks and weeks, if not months, in a body shop, just trying to get the doors to shut and the front end to go on it.
Yeah.
And we were actually spent some time with Tim Hodgins from Synergy, and he was showing us like some of the fit and how this new C7 body looks. And I'm like, this technology has come a long way.
He had that body. He brought it to Bradenton, I guess, maybe to show you guys and a couple of others the new C7 that he's got.
Yeah, it's on the jig, and it's that technology is everywhere. So therefore, it's made easier. But you pay more for it because the technology is there. But it saves you in other places too. So, I mean, that technology is in engines, transmissions, torque converters, drive units, tires, wheels. Like look in 2020 when we put 18-inch wide wheels on my car, you know what I mean? Like,
which was like huge hubbub, right?
Yeah,
like,
and then like everybody found that out, so then we went and had 20-inch wheels built, and we put them on, and then they outlawed them, right? So like,
it is an interesting thing, and it's cool because I like hearing stories of guys trying stuff, and that's the name of the game, right? That's the spirit that this sport was built on the back of, in my opinion, is like that ingenuity and innovation and trying new things and doing it differently. That's always kind of been the part of the song and dance to drag racing. But it does seem like, as our sport, I think there's a great example in pro stock. Like, pro stock was headed towards this place, or was there, where you had You basically had to have your own engine shop, your own people, all this R&D, year-round testing, engines on dynos, cylinder heads being floated, intakes being built, all this insanity. And it kind of got to a point where now you have a package. Like you partner up with KB, Titan, or you partner up with Elite Motorsports or whomever. There are others, and you run their package. Like it's typically a certain chassis, certain tire, shock combo. We're going to make you pretty successful with just this. This is our off-the-shelf deal. And I think there's like two conflicting schools of thoughts, because I know racers that really love having their own one-off deal and doing it their way and not taking, not doing the store-bought approach, so to speak. But then I also see guys that spend years and years and years chasing their tails, when I wish they would have just gotten teamed up with somebody that could have put them in, got them close. Does that make sense, Mike? Like just get them close, get them within striking distance. Because I look at some of the people that come into our sport, make a big splash, buy all this latest, greatest equipment, and then struggle for 2 or 3 seasons and ultimately go bass fishing. And that's why I'm kind of receptive to more of these packages and programs and camps being established. That was my next question for John. Like, how meaningful is it to be successful in the Winter Series and win the World Series of Pro Mod from a business perspective when you've got Elite Motorsports and Proline Racing Engines and Noonan and all these different kind of factions that are coming around, right? KTR, Stevie Jackson and his group, like they're offering the kind of rent a ride or run your program service at this point. There's more and more of that coming, I think. And I think I'm okay with it. Mike, what's your kind of thoughts on that?
It's two different schools of thought, I would say. It really does. You start to lose some of the stuff, the heyday of pro stock, like you were saying, or, back in the Glidden days and Warren Johnson days, a lot of their progress was made on just making runs and figuring this stuff out. And now it's kind of like, well, we've already got it figured out, at least to this point. Here's the package. And I think it just goes back to like the racer has changed, the customer base. Like we say that a lot with the Winter Series. Our customers are the racers, and what they want and the way they want to race is different than they don't. There's no time really to spend years figuring this stuff out. You've kind of got to just pick a direction from these guys that are working on it every day, whether that's a Pro Line or Salemi's or whatever, and then just lean on the progress they're making, and then you just tail that instead of everyone going their own path all the time. So to me, it's a different way to look at the sport, and I think it has helped the accessibility of it. And I do think there's no way, even though like we talk about the Rockingham 50 cars or whatever, and there were a couple team cars there, but by and large, almost every car there was a single car operation and an independent. Everyone was doing their own thing and had a unique combination in some way. But there's no way I feel like we get to 83 cars at World Series of Pro Mod if we're in that era or in that realm. I think that the way you get to those 83 cars is having that package. Like Tony Wilson comes to mind. Like his car wasn't ready. He decided he wanted to go Pro Charger racing. Ed Burnley and him swing a deal. He gets in Ed's car. He goes out. He didn't qualify, but he looked really good. And so it's like there's such an inventory of cars in these paths, like we said, whether it's a Pro Line, Salemi, whatever, that for these guys to choose. And it's like you just pick one and go, and then you can jump in and be competitive in a 3-race Winter Series over the course of 90 days. And then maybe you go a different direction when the PDRA season starts or the NHRA season starts. So I think it allows us to honestly do what we've done with the Winter Series at the expense of innovation and everyone, knocking a 10th off the ET every season. Those are some of the things you lose, but you do gain the how tight the fields are and just the accessibility of it for these guys to come race. So I think there's a trade-off to everything, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing Pro Mod especially move in that direction.
Yeah, we were talking about the camps being established.
Yeah.
Yourself, you have a squad of cars and drivers and teams that are under your umbrella, and then we have Proline and Elite and the Noonan groups, and even the J&A cars. And what are some of the others? I'm Stevie Jackson and Killing Time Racing, Todd Tutterow, YO Motorsports. Like these packages being developed. Like how much pride does that give you? Like having the success that you've had in the Winter Series, winning the back-to-back World Series of Pro Mod with your clients. I mean, is that an exciting thing for you? Like that part of this, competing on a business aspect or from a business kind of aspect?
That's probably one of the most satisfying things about it all. Like when it happened, first person I turned around was Evan first, but like, and then I saw Jim, and I was like, the satisfaction that was glowing for us at that point in time, knowing that like the package worked again and won the race. It was like, like, and that was special for him because that car comes back and forth with us to the racetrack, and Jim does all the service on that race car, and along with Mike doing all the engines on it and stuff like that. But that is the satisfying part. And business wise, I think that's like super satisfying because everything that you've put together, can get the job done, right? From the tune up to the build to the maintenance to the power to the reliability of the package. That's what it's all about. And when you've been able to do that and be successful with that, in winning is like a once in a lifetime thing, I guess you could say. And somehow that's, fortunately for us, it's happened twice with the World Series in a row now. But Melanie said, I didn't qualify. Now I qualified. Well, now I'm going to win it. Keep the streak going. So
yeah,
she's
like, got to, man.
Whoa,
got to keep the go for 3, right? What is there, like, whenever we first started talking a lot, John, you were like deeply involved in the supercharger component of all this stuff. We've seen all these things like evolve. Like there's a lot of hubbub right now around nitrous pro mod racing and some of the changes and evolution that's happening there, even though it dates way back. We see the way the turbo combination kind of rose to prominence and then faded somewhat and now is back fairly prominent. The screw supercharger has become like the kind of go-to 8th mile pro mod approach. I'm just curious, like, what do you see on the horizon? I mean, a few years ago, you would have laughed if somebody told you that a car was competitive with a pro charger in pro modified, right? Yeah. And now that is one of the predominant combos. Well, do you see anything like down the road for like screw type superchargers? Because it feels like as reliable and all the benefits of it, that is some technology that is well established. It's been around for a long time. Like, do you see evolution or further progress to be made in that department, like the traditional supercharger?
I think the biggest thing with the screw blower is that there needs to be some changes or some production type of things that make it a little bit more feasible to obtain one and doesn't drive this market like out of control like it is right now. It's unfortunate that PSI can't produce them any quicker than they do. I know it's a tricky, complex part to build, but the demand right now is like astronomical and the supply is, at least like minimal, and it's driven the pricing like just completely out of control. That needs to be handled. The crappy thing about the other side of the belt driven blower deal is the roots blower, substantially less horsepower, as reliable, but you need you need a lightweight package to run the car. Could I achieve that package with Melanie being a light driver and us building our own cars and having engine dynos and doing all this stuff? Yes, we proved that in 2022 when they wrote us right out of the rule book. So that combination is accessible, but it's not as easy for most teams to accomplish that, to get that, to make that happen. And, Pro Boost and PDRA started as a root supercharged deal only, right? And it was like that until I think 2021 when they let the screw blower in to compete with the Pro Charger because the Pro Charger had such an advantage. And there's a part of me that wishes that wouldn't have happened, right? And they would have just controlled the Pro Charger and we could have still been doing our roots package and you wouldn't have to have the lightweight car. And so much of this whole deal with any evolution of the pro modified class is all at hand of the rules makers and the rules committees. So like what happens if a new they're not going to make a new screw blower that's worse. Right. It's gonna be better. Then it's here we go again, right? Like now if you have blower X, it's gonna be 70 over, and blower Y existing is gonna be 92 over. It's just gonna be like just more and more and more stuff to deal with, right? But it's the class, it's the evolution, it's heads up racing, it's what comes along with it. And I say all the time, like, savor these moments when we got these cars and this amount of participation, because we're all living in it right now. But what's happening is going to be talked about for ages, and it's really historical, from the Winter Series races to the involvement in competitiveness of the PDRA, and you got NHRA is back on the deal with 20 and 30 cars. Like, just think about what's going on here, man. Like, it's crazy, and everybody is paying attention to it. It's so awesome.
Well,
It's great.
There's
to be
a great
involved in it.
comment here from Jarrell Aplo saying that the screw blower messed up Pro Mod and for the average guy. And it's interesting because I used to be of that same camp. I think I've told Mike probably 10,000 times, like, screw blowers ruin everything everywhere they go. Like, wherever they go, it's bad. But there was an argument made kind of at the height of the NHRA Pro Mod, when you guys were actually getting involved, and the Real Pro Mod Association was running the show with NHRA Pro Modified. And I remember having a lot of conversations with team owners and crew chiefs about the issue they had with the Roots blower, is that you had to have one of these big name blowers, right? You had to have a Chuck Ford blower, you had to have an Al Billis blower, you had to have your stuff, you had to have, you know what I mean? You had to have one of these names, and a lot of those guys had like limited inventory. They were lease programs. They were getting more and more expensive. I had racers telling me like, hey, I'm paying $250,000 a year for a blower and I don't even own one.
Yeah.
I don't even have one. They come and take it off my car every weekend and take it home, and I don't even see it. And so it kind of opened my eyes to the justification of allowing the screw blower into Pro Modified to try to curtail that. But it's created a new issue in the limited availability of those units, and it drove the price of them up. So it's one of those things that are extremely hard to balance, because I'm with you. I don't have to rewind the clock very far back to go, like, we don't need the screw blowers we don't need top alcohol funny car with doors. We need Roots blowers on these cars. But now that the Rabbits, I don't know that there's any going backwards at this point. People are too invested. But I was curious, because it does seem like something that I hear about throughout the season is somebody trying to buy a blower, or somebody coming into the sport and buying all the blowers somebody had, and it's like, holy moly, this has introduced like a whole new wrinkle to what's already a pretty complicated ordeal.
Yeah, absolutely. And right now, I don't see it getting any better. That's the biggest problem of it all. It's not oh yeah, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Well, I don't know. I don't think so. Hold on to them dearly and don't damage them. That's our motto. You know what I mean?
Well, they are. I mean, and it's only one company that's producing them too. Like, if you had multiple companies, but we run into that. I mean, Pro Charger, until the Hearts Charger is coming about now, but there's really only one place to get those things. And like you were talking about, the limited availability of really just the people that tune the Roots blowers, I guess, was the the limiting factor there. I mean, Nitrous kind of has its thing too, as far as just being, one or two. Really. They all have their limiting thing, and it really is driven by the fact that there's such demand for them. I mean, I don't have the numbers, but there are probably 40 or 50 screw blower cars at our 83 car Winter Series race. It's the dominant combination, and that's a vast majority of those screw blowers that exist in the country. And it was really just limited to like Pro Extreme Outlaw stuff before that.
Back
so
in the day,
the demand wasn't there. So now it's the go-to combination for the hottest race series in the country, plus NHRA Pro Mod has allowed them, plus PDRA's allowed them. It drives that stuff through the roof. And I don't really know what the answer is. Maybe it goes back to, like you said, there's not enough people and manufacturers and everything willing to do the work or to expand. I mean, it's kind of a catch-22 deal where it's like you expand, but then all of a sudden the rules change, and now you've got more capacity than demand. So you're always kind of chasing this thing.
Yeah, and I don't think that's ever going to stop. If it's not this thing, it's going to be that thing, and you're not going to be able to get something for. I mean, I've waited. I'm waiting for crankshafts for like 6 to 8 months. Crankshafts, and then like if you need 5 of them, you better order 15.
Mm-hmm.
And then somebody's got to pay for that to sit there on the shelf and be like, "Oh, I need one now. Oh, I need one now." Right? Like, so you got $100,000 tied up in inventory of just cranks. right?
It's absolutely bananas, man. I mean, it's like something that it is. It's the ultimate double-edged sword. I got 2 more questions for you, John, before we let you go. But I do want to take a quick second here and remind everybody that each and every episode of the Wes Buck Show is made possible by way of our friends at Stroud Safety. Stroud Safety is known for their top-quality racing safety equipment, from drag chutes and seatbelts to fire suits and blankets, all 100% made in America. Log on to StroudSafety.com today. Make sure you tell them we sent you. John, one thing you mentioned earlier was like this whole world we're living in where, you know, it's an adage I've heard for 100 years, right? Good help is hard to find. It does seem like something that is a significant issue in our sport right now. However, I'm kind of an eternal optimist, and I want to give some kudos to, you know, former or Drag Illustrated 30 under 30 alumni, Evan Salemi, and your son. And when you look around the pits and, you know, guys like you and I, we're not getting any younger, but I know that I kind of get excited when I get up to the starting line and I see Evan playing a prominent role on a pro mod team. I see the Mark Savages and where where he's risen to, Anthony with Elite Motorsports, even Justin Elks. I mean, Ty Tutterow. There's a lot of Alec Bledsoe that tunes for Craig Sullivan. Like, there are some young faces and young people. I mean, does that make you feel good? What do you think about like some of these second, third generation crew guys and crew chiefs in training that you see in the pits these days?
I embrace them to the nth degree. And, you know, sometimes, because that's all I wanted when I was coming through the ranks too. And I don't know, it's weird. I still feel like I'm coming through the ranks. I don't know.
Same. I know exactly what you mean.
I don't ever
we're old now, man. I hate to tell you.
I don't ever
gray hair
ever
showing up on the screen today. Here.
Yeah. I don't ever want to not feel like that though, right? Like, I tell everybody I'm still doing the same things that I was when I graduated high school. I'm still racing and I still play rock and roll. So, fortunately for me, like, but I really embrace all the young talent. Like, it's funny, like, I get done at the office last night at the house and it's about 8:00 and I go over to the shop and who's in the shop? Lucas and Evan. Like, they're never not at the shop. Like, you know, they're doing something, whether it's working on Melanie's car. Like, you know, we just, you know, got a new to us truck and trailer, and Melanie's in the motorhome, like, doing her thing. And Evan and Luke are like organizing and mounting stuff to the wall and transferring everything back over from the small trailer to the new trailer. And like, the kids never, ever stop. And like, I'm telling you right now, like, we couldn't do what we do without that youth. And not only in my team, but like, it's everywhere. And when I tell my kids all the time, like, man, like, the world is yours if you want it right now, because there's not a lot of people to compete against. And if you got it together, you can own it and you can rule it and you can do whatever you want to do with it. And Evan and my daughter Akira really have both taken to that, taken their passions to heart that way and really ran with them. And I couldn't be more proud.
Because I look around right now, and that was one thing that's a lot of feedback we got about the World Series specifically, but the entire Winter Series was just how many young people are there. I mean, I had multiple people tell me like, man, this seems like a super young crowd compared to a lot of drag races. And I'm like, that's exactly what I want to hear. But I'm glad to hear that we've got that youth. And I look around the pits and I see the Brandon Strouds and the Johnny Millers following his dad around, Jamie, and like learning and running these cars on their own and making decisions. And that's so good for our sport. And it does give me hope, because one of the issues that I see, Lee White is another one that I feel like I left out. There's a slew of them. But my point is, like, I think that's promising. You know, obviously, do we wish we had people maybe beating our doors down to go work on these cars? Because it's obviously, like we touched on earlier in the show, not easy. But I do think it's pretty incredible that there is this crop of young people, and we can only hope that they have kids, or they have, you know, they bring more people into this walk of life, so to speak, and have some success. And it's kudos to guys like you that are willing to give him a chance. Brian Loans told me one time, he goes, drag racers eat their young. And there's some real truth to that, right? Like, I've seen, I mean, that was kind of the relationship I had with my dad growing up. It was always, get out of the way before you screw this up, or get out of the way, push me out of the way. I'll do it myself. And it's great to see guys like yourself and many others. Steve Petty, look at all the people that he's kind of brought under his wing and taught things and showed them how it's done. And it's great, because I've seen teams really limited by not being willing to share anything that they know, right? Like, because they keep everybody at arm's length and keep everybody out. And ultimately they start to struggle because they're not embracing those new people. So I think that that's I can't imagine it doesn't help everything you're doing at Resolution and G-Force and Stoicki racing engines. Like all these things have to be helped by the fact that you guys are willing to bring in that new blood, and we appreciate it, man. We need more of it.
Perfect. Yeah, that's I say the same thing. And like that was like when Evan did, got to 30 under 30 in 2023. And like you came up to me at one point in time, like several years before that, because he was getting votes, and you're like, don't worry. He was like 17 or 18. You're like, don't worry, Evan will get the 30 under 30. He goes, but I just got all these people that are almost aging out that really deserve it too. And Evan's got many years before that comes. So it was very important to recognize those people. And, not that I thought or just, think that Evan deserved it more than anybody else, but like, it was good to know that. And I thought for a second, I was like, you know what, that's completely true. And you got to, there's always two sides to every story, and you always have to know both sides before you get wound up or emotional about whatever's going on.
Well, and it's tough because we have to balance that. Like when we look at those lists, we think about things like, okay, you don't have to spend a whole lot of time laboring over. I mean, we get thousands and thousands of submissions, and it's overwhelming at first. But once it starts to get whittled down, I can look at 17-year-old Evan Salemi and go, okay, his last name, and I know his parents. I know they're not going anywhere. These people are here for the long haul. So I probably have a little bit more flexibility with that than maybe I do some complete unheard of that's having this really big moment in the sun, but I know that they're, racing in a class that they probably can't support for the rest of their lives, right? Yeah. Maybe, they're probably not going to have this sponsor that's keeping them in pro stock or on a pro stock bike forever. So I got to make sure that we take advantage of that moment to celebrate them. So it's like this ongoing calamity of trying to consider the context, because like I tell everybody, context matters. Like it matters the most, actually. And the context of some of those decisions are really important. But we knew like Evan Salemi is going to be a part of this sport for the foreseeable future. So we got some room to work with here. But there are plenty of other situations where we're forced to make a hard decision and leave someone out that's 28, 29, and we know that they're kind of coming close. But here's this kid that's having this moment in the sun that may not last forever, and we need to take this opportunity. So it's, some we win some, we lose some, but I'm really proud of that group of kids that we've got involved, and it's just great to see them shining. Like even thinking about a teenage kid or a early 20s kid on the starting line making some sort of significant contribution to as you said earlier, a hundreds of thousands of dollar project. I mean, that's just badass. And I don't think you see that in many other walks of life where it's like, hey, this young man is being trusted to change the barrel valve or whatever after the burn. Like if he screws up, this is probably going to burn the motor up or whatever else. And see young people entrusted like that, I think is really, really incredible, man. And I'm glad to see and hear you say that you embrace them at every turn. I think it's a really important thing, man. Yeah, so
I pick on Jeff Pierce and Evan because they're both 30 under 30.
Yeah, Jeff Pierce is another one that we've seen. I've known Jeff since we were both teenagers. Like we were in our early teens, I think, when we met for the first time. And to see what he has accomplished across a slew of different combinations and different approaches, it's been really crazy to see. But it makes me feel good because I do feel like that's an issue we've got, like a limited inventory of the brain power that it takes to run these cars and compete at a high level. So it's great to see some up and comers and fresh faces down on the starting line.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey guys, we're running behind. We got guests stacking up here. We got to move on. John, hate to cut you off, but we got to move on. We got Paul Mouhayet.
No worries.
John, thank you so much for your time and your candor, dude. I always enjoy chatting with you. You shoot us straight, and we got a lot of positive comments on this stuff already. So thank you so much, man. I'm looking forward to seeing you at the PDRA season opener. We're just a couple weeks away from the PDRA's return to action at Galot Motorsports Park. I think it'll be, dare I say it, a barn burner. I think there's a lot of momentum in outlaw or 8th mile door slammer drag racing right now, and it's going to be exciting to see that carry on into the PDRA season, man. So I guess we'll come look you up there.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks for having me, and let's keep this ball rolling as hard and on fire as we can, right?
Let's do it, brother. Pedal through the firewall. See you, buddy.
See you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, brother. All right, guys, I want to take a quick second here and remind you that each and every episode of the Wes Buck Show is made possible by our friends at Applied Racing Technology. Based in Clearwater, Florida, ART has spent more than 2 decades earning a reputation as one of drag racing's top names for quality parts and award-winning service. These guys live and breathe motorsports, whether it's Pro Mod, Pro Stock, all of these important, super important grassroots and outlaw categories. ART also is committed to giving back. They've sponsored and supported some of the biggest races in the country, worked with world champions. So if you're in the hunt for top-tier components and expert guidance for your race program, you got to check out our friends at Applied Race Technology. That is appliedracetechnology.com. Show them some love for supporting the show and supporting the sport of drag racing. Guys, I'm excited to have our next guest on here. I was telling the team earlier in the week who I wanted to try to track down, and I just had a couple of really inspiring conversations with this young man down in Bradenton a few weeks ago, and I just thought if we can get him, even though he's all the way across the world and it's like the wee hours of the morning, I think, or at least bright and early in the morning in Australia right now, let's give it up for the one and only Paul Mouhayet. Paul, what's up, brother?
Thanks, man. Really appreciate it.
I brought your drinking buddy with me. So JT's here with us to join the party, man. Well, hey, what time is it in Australia right now? 6, 7 in the morning?
7 a.m., yeah.
7 a.m., man. It's a wild deal, man. I can't tell you enough how much it means to us and how humbling it is that people traveled across an ocean to come be a part of our event, not to mention sent a race car over. And I know it was kind of a happenstance thing that happened last minute, but man, I couldn't have been more proud to see you guys out there qualify for the quickest Pro Mod field in history. First time out racing this configuration. John Rica, the whole group, you guys absolutely crushed it. And I wanted to bring you on here just as someone who's been one of the faces of Australian drag racing for as long as I can remember. I'm just curious, like, what was your experience like coming over and being a part of the American Pro Modified racing? I know you guys participated in Lights Out, did really, really well, the radio racing, but switched it over to Big Tires and Bars to come run with us in Bradenton. And I'm just curious, like, your overall reaction to being there and racing in such a decidedly different environment.
Well, firstly, I'd really like to, thank you for the opportunity because, man, not in our wildest dreams did we ever think that we could, participate and even run with guys that were the best in the world. So that I really appreciate the opportunity to do it to start with. Man, it was wild. It was beyond any of our expectations. And like you said, coming off Lights Out, I sort of said to the team, we made the finals. We lost to Ken, still come runner up with a car that had never been on radials before. And I said to him, look, this is the best of the best. So if we can qualify, I think we've already won in our own, in our own team. And they all agreed with me. And man, we got there and we had the time of our lives. By Q3, we were out. We're on the outside looking in. We had one more shot at it, and we pulled it off. So it was amazing.
It was awesome to see you guys, like the international flair of this event. It's something that we really take seriously. Like we go out of our way to try to involve as many people from different parts of the world as we can. And it's crazy to see how much movement there is. I mean, we had drivers from Russia, we have drivers from the Middle East, we have drivers from Australia. It's an incredible thing to see. Sweden. But what do you make of like comparing and contrasting Top Door Slammer, if you will, or Pro Modified down in Australia? I know you guys primarily race quarter mile. That's where I became familiar with the name Paul Mouhayet and the Moits car and doing all these record-setting runs and crushing a record every time you were given the opportunity to do so, a variety of different power adders. Can you compare and contrast like the scene, like the big difference? I saw you make a really powerful post on social media immediately following the race, or perhaps during World Series of Pro Mod, just talking about how we were able to take all these different power adders and make them close together, and as if that was something that seemed to be a struggle in Australia. Can you kind of give us the lay of the land there and what you think like the future looks like for fast door slammer racing in Australia?
Yeah, so primarily in Australia, quarter mile door slammer racing is D-rotor, screw blown, 108 overdrive, mechanical injection only. No traction control allowed. So that's just what they did from back in the day, and they just continue to keep doing it. And there is a Pro Mod class, but it's basically a fixed index 585, any power adder, and you basically have to run up to 585. So the reason I made the post was, man, I've driven turbo cars, I've driven screw-blown cars, and I think drag racing in Australia is at a point where we really need to combine the Pro Mod fixed index deal and the door slammer deal together and have different power adders. And everybody's like, oh, but it's too hard to make rules. And, you know, what happens if he uses traction control and he doesn't? And I'm like, you know what? The most basic thing to do is now that we've run World Series, grab the rule book for World Series. And I think that 8th mile drag racing is, I never liked it before because I'm a quarter mile racer, and you know we've broken world speed records a quarter mile, but I really think 8th mile is where it's at the moment. And you know, you're not doing 270 mile an hour. God forbid if you have an accident, it's not as bad. But I think if we can implement the 8th mile rules that World Series have, and then modify some rules to allow a D-rotor in so that the door slammer guys can race the World Series type deal, I think that's the future for now. I've spoken to a lot of people here and they are definitely keen to try that. Door slammer seems to go okay and have decent numbers on the west coast of Australia, but the centre and east coast of Australia, it's dead. You know, you may have 5 or 6 cars turn up to an event, whereas Western Australia may have 12 cars turn up to an event. If it was a combined deal and you could have turbo, nitrous, pro charge, and screw cars together, I'm very confident we could end up with a 16-car field, no problem. So it's just trying to get the rule package over the line. And I think it definitely can grow. And like I said, there's a lot of interest here.
I think it's important because, like, as we start to look forward, you know, international expansion has been, you know, something that we've talked about a lot amongst this group. Mike and JT and I, our whole team at Drag Illustrated, is it's like, how do we continue to evolve and grow? Because we want to expose more people to what we're doing. You know, we want to get more, we want to sell more tickets. We want to get more eyeballs on live streams and on videos, social media content. We want to grow the audience, but we also have to be mindful of all the great racing opportunities that exist here in the States and not, you know, do anything that would cannibalize otherwise very successful series. So we're kind of looking at, like, where do we get in, where we fit in. And,
Paul said he's going to make it happen for us.
Well, I'm telling you, man, I really feel,
it's going to happen.
You know, I don't want to get the cart ahead of the horse or whatever, but I truly believe that a Drag Illustrated World Series of Pro Mod Australian qualifier could happen. A Drag Illustrated World Series of Pro Mod Arabian Gulf region qualifier could happen, where we go hold, you know, scaled down events from World Series, but they're a lot of the same feel. You know what I mean? Like the the things that we do from a production standpoint.
I really think we can make it happen. And it's, I've got the ball rolling already. Man, if we can do a 3-series World Series race over here as a qualifier, and then obviously, you know, we work it out, and the winner or the points champion of the series gets their car brought to the World Series, it'll entice a lot of people to want to come and do what we're doing. And man, being at Bradenton at that World Series, I keep saying to people, like, came back to Australia and I'm like, we ran 80 plus cars in 2 hours and 3 minutes. Like, it's not normal. It's not heard of. And the reason that happens is because, like you said, you invite the right people. Nobody fumbles on the start line. There's no games played. Yes, you might have a little bit of a staging duel, but, you know, you're not waiting for a dude to start up because his starter's not there or his dude's not there to start it. Or everybody was professional. The job got done. I think we had maybe one oil down in a whole week, and it was just a loose fitting on the start line in Keith Haney's car. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, it's never heard
amazing.
Of. Because
and I try to tell people, like, that is not a reflection of us. I mean, I'm proud of the group of people we pick, but that's easy to accomplish when you've got the baddest sons of bitches on the planet all in one place. And I know that I can trust these people, whether it's the guy driving the car, the guy tuning the car, everybody standing around it. I trust them, and they're there for a reason, because we believe in them and we believe that they can be a part of this fast-paced show that we're trying to create. And it's really a reflection of just having the best racers in the world. I couldn't be more proud of them. Like, every time we get through one of those rounds in 2 hours, like, I check in with Gavin at the end of every round, our race director, Gavin Carter, who I believe to be one of the best in the business. I call up to Gavin, how long did it take? You know, hour and 62, you know, hour and 2 hours and 3 minutes, whatever it was, hour and 39 minutes. And it's like that being able to do that repeatedly is a direct result of having the best teams, the best cars, the best drivers in the world at one place at one time. And I do think that there is, if we can create that type of environment, even if it's scaled down in the Middle East, in Australia, we recognize that like what we want, Pro Mod is the final frontier in our eyes. We feel it's the highest level of drag racing right now. And don't get me wrong, there are cars that are quicker and faster, and we can argue all those semantics. But as far as like the energy and momentum around a single eliminator in drag racing, Pro Modified is leading the way. And I think if we can expand that with you saying a unified rule set, Mike and I have been talking about this for 20 years. If we could have a unified rule set that this is what we honor around the globe, we could change the world. I mean, we could have all of a sudden not only 80 cars in Bradenton, we could have 200 or 300 cars that are running similar rules. And I understand there's going to be variations, right? Like you said, the D-rotor thing here, certain things make sense in certain places. But I really think that we could be on the cusp of like of a new revolution in drag racing.
Yep, I totally agree, and that's why I said, you know, if we can introduce the 8th mile deal here in Australia and everybody complies by the rules, and you only need, I spoke to John Sears, he's even happy to come and educate a couple of guys here, tech inspectors. Man, there's no reason why it can't happen. There's honestly not. We have some of the best facilities in the world here. I personally, and I'm probably being biased here, I think Sydney Dragway, where I come from, is probably one of the best facilities I've ever been to, ever. And there's enough people, when you combine all the power adders together, there's enough cars and enough teams to make it happen.
Well, I'll tell you, man, that's the dream, right? I really feel like that's the best thing that we can do for our sport, for our brand, is to go global. You know, we're bringing the big name global drivers into this deal, but I think that we've got to create a pathway for others to get involved. And
how many cars do you think there is in Australia?
Like Pro Mod, fast door slammer, tube chassis, carbon body type stuff.
Probably, I'm going to say 50.
That's enough, man.
Yep.
That's enough. Because to your point, you got to start small and make it sustainable.
Turn up.
Get 12 of them,
you
get 16.
Well.
Yeah, I think we can do it.
I really think we can.
And that becomes... So take us through the process. I think some people would be interested to hear what it's like racing internationally. So can you take us through like what that whole process looks like getting the car? I'm talking like from your shop in Australia to what has to happen in order to get that thing to America, all the parts and pieces that you need to race in America. Yeah, what's that whole process look like?
Well, we've been lucky. I've been lucky since Moyet's days. All the cars that I've raced in the US or I've helped have been built and left in the US. So we don't actually ship them from Australia to the US. They're already there. But it's not a big deal to, you know, pack them in a container and send them over there. It's happened before many times. But basically, you know, Proline, Eric, Doug, and the team there are, you know, they're the best thing that's ever happened. And basically I ring up Eric and say, listen, we want to go lights out radial racing. And then Rob, he looks after me, the sales guy, Rob, and Eric and I have a WhatsApp group, and then we discuss what needs to happen, what needs to be done. The car needs to be turned from an outlaw big tire car that just went 537 at Bradenton into a radial car. Okay, we need to buy wheels. We need to do this. We need to go. It needs to go to RK to get travel limiters put on it. So it's all discussed over a group chat. And honestly, if it wasn't for those guys, it would never happen, because we literally turn up there and everything's done. We turn up there the day before we need to go racing, because as you can appreciate, we've all got business to run here. So we go to America and we're there for 2 or 3 weeks. None of us can afford to have another week off just to pack a trailer and get stuff done. So we rock up to Proline on a Sunday. Yep, they're open on a Sunday if we turn up. Load the car in the transporter, and then we jump on a plane and head off to Bradenton, South Georgia, wherever it is. And the truck ends up there, you know, that day. Unload it, race it. There's spares. We discuss what spares we need. We have a spare motor. There's always rods, pistons, all the bits and pieces that we need to go racing. And look, most of the time, we're lucky enough that Petty's with us. He's got Ken Q testing if we're testing, or there's, a bunch of other guys that are racing. So if we don't have the parts on board, somebody does. The Proline trailer turns up to the racetrack normally when it's an event. There's plenty of spare parts in the trailer, as long with the fuel tech stuff as well. So they basically, all I do is manage what happens, but they make it happen. Obviously, John, Ricker, and all the boys, we all jump on a plane and fly over there together, and it's our team from Australia that get the car turned around, turned from a radial car into a big tyre car, and in between rounds, we make it happen. But without the Proline guys and Petty, and man, it'd never happen. They're family to me, and Eric says to me all the time, he's like, man, I really appreciate the fact that you've always stuck by us. And I literally bleed Proline. I wouldn't go anywhere else. If I left Proline, I'd leave drag racing.
We were talking earlier in the show with John Salemi about how these camps are getting established, and you see it like the Proline team all parked together, Killing Time Racing all parked together, these things happening in our sport. And it's great because we talked about the accessibility that it provides. I mean, the fact that you guys can fly in from Australia and have everything pretty much available to you to go and be successful and qualify for the quickest race in the history of the sport. I mean, that's what more of a sales pitch do you need than that, right? I mean, and that's the exciting part about this sport. And I think the opportunity that exists, I talked to a team owner a couple of weeks ago who told me that he had a kid that was 17 years old, spending about $1 million a year to race like some Mazda rally car. You know what I mean? And like never be meaningful, nothing. And I'm like, there is people spending money in motorsports that if they knew this opportunity even existed to go spend that kind of, they'd move. Mm-hmm. They would come here. But we've got to be more outspoken about these type of things, because I think it's something our sport at times is like, this is such like a blue collar group of people, right? That everybody wants to be the guys that do it all themselves. And I drove the truck and I drove the trailer and I put the awning out myself. But we're in a different world now. You know what I mean? It's a different time, and you've got to be running your business, making the money to go afford to go racing. And so the trade-off, I mean, I get it. Everybody loves those old stories of how we used to do it all ourselves, but that's just not where our sport is anymore.
Especially at this level.
You said something that one of the chip draws, you said something, and I walked away and I'm like, man, I've never thought of it like this. But I remember you said something along the lines of, we've got enough brains on this property to send a spaceship to the moon in 3 days. And you walk away and like, man, most of these guys in the pits here aren't engineers, but they could teach an engineer, how to be an engineer. And it's, we're surrounded with, and this is, I come back to surround yourself with the best to be the best. And that's who I think, I think Petty and Proline are the best at their job. But in the whole deal there, there's some brains there, man. Like we went to the chip draw, and look, in the beginning, I didn't agree with the chip draw, but at the end of it, I'm like, you know what? It works because anybody can win. It doesn't mean the dude that qualified number one's going to win. You leave that chip draw, and it doesn't matter who you draw. There ain't no ducks there. Like, you're in trouble. If you haven't got your own A game, you are in big trouble. And it's like, man, I don't think you can make that deal any better. And I'm being honest here. I don't think you could make that whole World Series any better than you have, besides having some faster cars there. And look, where do you draw the line? I don't know. The rules, like John said before, this is just going to keep getting faster and faster. And I think you got to go back to, I raced PDRA Pro Extreme back in the day when I had the turbo car. And that didn't live because it became too far out of reach for people to afford to do it. So I think the rule makers, and as much as people don't like them, have to stick to their guns and keep doing what they're doing. Man, you've got nitrous, Pro Charger, screw blown, and turbo cars running within 600ths of each other. How can you get it any better than that? But
that's all Mike talks about anymore is rules.
They've got to keep their
finger on the pulse
and not let it get out of control.
Yeah, and because I feel like I tell our team all the time, we have to, racers, this is a community of people that push the envelope. They know no other way. Like, this is the way this group of people is wired. So at times our responsibility is to protect our racers from themselves, because we 100%. Will shorten the wick. And I mean, I can make a case for that. I mean, every week we do this show and we get a bunch of comments, take all the weight off of them, let them run outlaw. We've tried that, guys. History tells us it doesn't work. It's a race to the bottom. It's like competing on price. Like, no business I mean, that's a disaster. That's why nobody wants to compete with Amazon or whatever, because they can buy more and sell it cheaper than you can, you know? And it's like, if that's the game you're playing, you're inevitably going to lose. So our challenge is more to like make it attainable, because it's, I mean, here in North America, Paul, I shit you not, I bet there's probably 200 better or more cars that can, big tire pro mod style cars that can run in the 360s. That's insane.
Yep.
You know, I mean, it's absolutely insane. And we become desensitized to just how absurd that actually is. But the fact of the matter is, there are over 200 cars that can perform like that. So what can we do to keep them in that window and always give them the chance to evolve? I mean, I saw the reaction and the pop from the crowd. We pay attention to those things when Mark Mickey went 223 or whatever and 357. People love those numbers, but I think you can't have your deal built around setting records, because the records need to be the cherry on top, the icing on the sundae. The air is really good, the track's killer, somebody's going to do something special. But I think over the course of the last really 10, 15 years, a lot of events started to be judged almost entirely by, was the new record set? And that's not sustainable. Like every year you'd go to one of these races and everybody's waiting with bated breath to see who's going to hit the home run ball, you know, or blow the scoreboards down. And it's like, that's not sustainable. I mean, because we can only go so fast. It's physics, you know, and it's going to cost so much. So I do think that like the challenge for us is keeping the excitement, keeping the enthusiasm high, while not trying to reset the door slammer record every time we unload these cars.
Yeah. And obviously, you know, the conditions make a big difference here. You saw it lights out. It was, you know, walking around, it was minus 1,000 feet below. And we're like, walk up to the staging lanes and it's 200 feet below. And we're like, damn, the air's gone away. The air's gone away. It's
200
like,
feet below sea level.
Man. We are the most greedy human beings that have ever been put on the face of the earth. And look, I said to John the other day, let's leave the car there and, you know, try and do something, another radial event or whatever. And he's like, what happens if the air's not there, man? Like, again, trying to set a record. You know what I mean? It's whereas that whole World Series deal, if the air's not there for me, it's not there for you. Like, it doesn't matter. We're not trying to reset a record every time we go out. It's so tough to qualify. You've won if you've qualified. And like I said to John, we qualified 20th, I think. On the third qualifier, we went into the fourth wall on the outside. We're like, man, we got one shot left at this. If we don't go down, not that we've wasted our time, but we haven't done what we wanted to do. We wanted to qualify. We make the last hit, we go number 20. Well, everyone's like, oh, number 20 out of 32 cars. Well, hang on a minute. It's number 20 out of 84 cars, really.
Yeah, right. So 100%.
You know, every now and again, you've got to reality check for yourself and say, don't get greedy here and try and go top 10, because these are the baddest dudes in the world. Like, there ain't no badder guys in door slammer or in pro mod than who are at that property. And it's cool because I've been coming there for so long that, you know, you walk through the pits and I see Billy Stockland, you know, all these dudes that I've worked with and, you know, grown in drag racing with. You don't need to ask, are they here? They're there. Like, it's the best of the best. And for me, it's, man, the guys that my mates from Australia that came with me are like, you know, every second person here. It's like, because the baddest dudes in the world are here. They're all in one place. And I don't think that happens at NHRA race because, you know, some people don't want to race NHRA. That whole deal there is wild because everybody wants in.
Yeah. No, it is. It's to me, it's like this ongoing, like, pinch me thing that it's even happening. But it's like, if you build it, they will come, right? And I truly believe all that crazy shit that I say. And I do think that this is the best drag racing has to offer the world. And if we have, like, if this sport is going to elevate in the motorsports landscape, it's going to be with pro modified cars that still look like cars driven by cowboys and cowgirls, letting it all hang out on the outlaw 8th mile. Like, it's a recipe for success. I mean, it truly is. And I think we've got to just keep the pedal down. Like, every week I'm challenged, like, okay, we got to talk about this. We need to talk about that. But this really is the most exciting thing happening in our sport. And I'm biased, obviously. But I mean, I look at the energy and the amount of, I mean, I'm still getting videos sent to me like every other hour from World Series. And it's been 3 weeks ago. And it's just the energy that's around it is palpable. And I'm quite proud of it. I think there's something special happening. Just wait till we unload these bad boys in Australia and pull one of these off at Sydney. We're gonna really open.
I promise you it'll work, man. It's everybody here's G'd up for it, and it's crazy because I was on the phone with John last week, and I'm like, I was racing on Saturday back in Sydney, and I walked through the pits, and random people that I don't know would stop me and like, you did us proud, man. You guys killed it. I can't believe it. You know, we've got some Aussies mixing it with the best in the world. And, you know, me and my buddies had the day off the next day because of the time difference, and they've got to watch it at 2:00 in the morning. That we're in our, garage watching it on TV. And I'm like, we don't realize, because we're there with you and we're busy and we're trying to get a job done, how many people back home have our back and actually get so excited about it. And that's just not in Australia. Obviously, you got the Brazilians, the Russians. Man, this is, I like your mentality that this is actually a World Series. I'm not putting shit on you, but a lot of Americans are like, America is World Series. Hang on a second. We actually have people from all over the world having a go here. So it's a legitimate World Series. And if we can do what we're saying and have a qualifier in Australia and the Middle East and do one in Brazil at Sydney's track, there's no reason why we can't actually make this a legit World Series and it already is, but yeah,
I agree.
You can stand there and say, hang on a second, anybody in the world that can qualify for this can come and race with us. I don't care where you're from, England, it doesn't matter. If you have the machinery and the team and the brains power to do this, bring it.
100%, man. Yeah. I can't wait for it, to be honest. I really feel like it is the logical path forward for us to keep this uniqueness of the Winter Series of there, and then go build these, satellite or qualifier events in other countries. Oh my goodness. And you talk about how that speaks to like Fortune 500 companies and like marketing minds in the world. I mean, they love the notion of a global footprint. All of a sudden it's an event that doesn't just, kind of have a big footprint in the Southeast and across the United States, but all of a sudden we are generating eyeballs and visibility around the globe. I mean, I think it's going to change some of the conversations as we move forward. So dude, those
people will pay attention more as well when we're having our events here. When we are having the DI Winter Series, everybody's going to tune in because they were involved in some sort of way, or even a spectator at one of the other qualifiers.
And I want it to be like, I want some guy right now to be dreaming of building a pro mod car in Sydney or whatever, and knowing that if he could get into one of these qualifier events, by God, he could be lining up against Stevie Jackson next winter, yep. And that is an exciting thing. It creates that aspirational culture that we need. Like, these are the tentpole events, but now we have to go create that bedrock of that'll produce organic growth, right? So the next crop of stars are being developed, and I really feel like that's our path forward. It really is, man. John or Paul, I appreciate you taking the time to chat with us this afternoon. I know you probably got to get to the shop now, right? Got to head to the office.
Okay. Yep. I appreciate it, man.
No, we look forward to seeing you soon. Are you coming back stateside anytime in the near future?
I'm not sure at the moment. I'll be back there, that. I'm not quite sure at the moment. Never know. We might bring John's car back home and qualify for the World Series and bring it back again.
That's what I'd like to see happen, brother. I'll see you in Bradenton for sure, starting next December. So I'd be marking your calendars.
We'll come for sure. Yep.
Okay, buddy.
Definitely,
well, hey,
man.
Thank you for everything, man. And we'll come and see you soon.
100%. And I appreciate everything you guys do for the sport. There's not many people that will put their balls on the line and really have a go at this. And you should be proud of what you got, man, because it's truly insane to think that you can do what you've done in such a short amount. And I know it's not a short amount of time, but, it's to get it done, talk about it, and then get it done. The whole world's talking about it, man. So you really should be proud of it.
Thank you, brother. It means a lot to me, man. Yep. Seriously. Tell John hi, and I'll see you guys soon.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
guys.
brother.
See you, Paul.
See you. Bye.
The show's becoming international, JT. Let's take a second here and remind everybody that each and every episode of the Wes Buck Show is made possible by way of our friends at Redline Synthetic Oils. Redline has a reputation with racers and hardcore enthusiasts for creating products that perform and protect better than any on the market, and they've been doing it since 1979. Whether it's your race car, your tow rig, your motorcycle, or your lawnmower, when you think about lubricants, you need to think about Redline. For more information, log on to redlineoil.com. JT, where did Mike go during all of that? Is he like anti-Aussie?
He must be.
Yeah. You
Oh,
know
yeah,
me.
look at
I'm
it.
Political
anti-Oscar.
statement.
No,
just
man,
Let's go, mate.
no way, dude. I was letting JT and those guys, man, were thick as
Oh.
thieves down there, Bradenton. I
We
was trying
were,
to let
yeah,
JT have some time.
we were holding down Linksters, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
That's
thank
why they
God.
want to come back to hang out with JT at Linksters.
Tell
Well,
you
hey,
what, if you just get a
before
fan to
we'll
go to
dive into a
Linksters.
little bit of Q&A here. But before we do so, let's bring on one of our longtime friends of Drag Illustrated, Flow Racing's own Courtney Anders. What's up, CE?
Courtney.
Oh, you're muted.
Rookie move to just come
Well,
on.
Rookie move.
To be fair, the dog is barking. It's been quiet and perfect this whole time. And as soon as you guys bring me on, he starts barking.
Probably heard Mike's
Hello, friend.
voice.
Yeah.
He
Triggers.
My
probably
customer
did.
service voice.
No, if you did, if you
Mhm.
took, if you took a fan up to Linksters, that's what I was going to say was that if they were around some of these racers a little bit and saw their personalities, man, they'd be hooked.
Who?
Anybody, a fan.
Oh,
A
yeah.
fan. I didn't know what
100%,
you
man.
said.
I didn't know what he said either. I was like, what? Now what?
Let's speak JT.
All I heard was links.
Yeah, I heard
I'm
it.
like, oh, we're not there.
Now it's pretty cool. Like between John and Paul and hearing these guys that are kind of known for home run hitting. I mean, Paul's like you just think about that 270 mile per hour deal and them setting the records, those videos that came out like 10 years ago with the turbo deal, kind of like transitioning from that to accepting where we are now with Pro Mod and the roll packages. Everywhere I hear like the Rockingham deal that they're going to do, like the big dog deal, that's going to be World Series rule based. They're talking about this deal in Australia. Everywhere you go, you hear like, we just need to take the World Series rules and do this, or take them and do that.
You're going to be busy going over all these rules.
No. I'm doing that. We do that once a year. We do that once.
All these runs. Yeah. You're going to have to keep track of all that.
Mike
shit,
loves
man.
it.
No, what's his,
I
we were
wish I had
talking
a
about
dog
it
whistle.
yesterday. Northeast Outlaw Pro Mod. They're looking at doing this as well. So I think all these organizations are taking a look at what we're doing, running all these combinations together and doing maybe some kind of slightly modified version of that. And I think it's really cool to see. The more that happens, like Paul was saying, there's 50 pro mods over in Australia, but they can only get like 12 to show up. And it's because of various factors. And I think that the more you get the rules where they work for everybody, obviously the more cars you're going to get to show up.
And we just have to remember, I think that like the drag racing fan base, of which I'm a part of, and I'm guilty as well. But we have to let go of this death grip on the record book. You know what I mean? Like it's this, it seems like every time we talk about these things, it's always this conversation like there should be no rules, run what you brung, hope you brung enough. And it's like, that's just not like, it sounds way easier than it actually is. And we've seen various examples throughout the course of drag racing history, which is a sport that's been around now for a century, 100 years, people have been drag racing. And any time that it becomes a no rules deal, it is short-lived. I mean, there's infinite examples of it. And I think that trying to just reframe it, that this is about competition. It's about closely paired people and parts and vehicles competing against one another, and get away from this chasing the record book thing, because the records are great. And it's a huge part of drag racing. It's a huge part of the driving force behind pretty much everybody who's ever drag raced, right? They're trying to set some personal best or set some personal record. And those things are fantastic, but they can't be the tip of the spear. The competition has to be the tip of the spear. Courtney, you're kind of joining this at a weird time. What's up with you?
Oh, nothing. Yeah, I mean, hell, you can throw me into anything. Come on, and JT mentions the word Linksters, so
I know,
familiar.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Familiar.
Yeah.
It's a nervous tick that he has now. He has to say
It is.
like,
He does Linksters.
or maybe he's got some kind of sponsorship deal with them.
They
I think
text
he's
me my
working
reward
something.
stuff, you know?
Yeah. No,
You're on
I
the
totally-
rewards program?
Yeah, I am. Shit.
Oh, that's hilarious.
It's a little sad.
Yeah,
Not
it's
really.
it's double.
So what's going on, C? What are we doing? You're heading to Phoenix this weekend.
I am
right?
heading to Phoenix this weekend. Actually, Wes and I, we've got our little channel that we kind of talk all things drag racing news that y'all know about, and it always every once in a while sparks like a random text rant. Wes is one of my favorite people to go on a text rant with, because when he's engaged, right, it's like
Oh yeah,
text
rapid
back and
ding ding
forth.
ding.
70
ding,
texts in a row, and then I don't.
when
One
you're
word.
when you're on
Just
it,
text,
you're
one
on
word.
it. And so we kind of got into a few things, and as our partnership with Flow Racing, we bring me on here every once in a while. So we just kind of figured, as the winter series ended and we were kicking it into more NHRA and PDRA type stuff, that we'd touch base again. So
No, it's fantastic. I'm genuinely looking forward to the PDRA season opener, but I'm also looking forward to NHRA kind of getting a restart because I felt like Gainesville with the weather, it just wasn't what that event
what's up with
has
Gainesville?
historically been.
I think they've messed up the date. I think that Gainesville needs to go back to being like now, like this weekend or next weekend. I think that couple of weeks, it makes it too dicey. And just that little difference, like from, South Florida, even to Bradenton to Gainesville, is just not quite there yet.
No, it's an unpredictable time of year. And it did suck because we've been off and we had been, some of them had been off. We had been racing in Bradenton, and it was kind of that shift of like, okay, putting all this behind and now we start there, but it never really like turned over. We never really got it moving. And so it kind of was a joy suck on Sunday. Yeah, we got it in, but we all know that everything would have gone different had the weather been different the day before, the racetrack, all of the things. But again, that's part of the deal that we do. But yeah, this is like what, 3 out of 5 Gainesvilles in a row that have just been kiboshed.
Yeah, it's such a special event. Like I've told many people that I don't think there's any event on the schedule for NHRA that I have personally looked forward to more so than Gainesville.
Yeah.
Like the fan base in Gainesville is probably my favorite. Like there is nowhere you can go that they don't know there's a drag race in town. Yeah. Every restaurant, every bar, coffee shop, anywhere you go, they know the Gators are this weekend. And I think that's not something you experience at every track in the country, right?
So what about this race in Phoenix this weekend though? I mean, it's got a huge fan following. I think they were doing the whole this is going to be the last one for about 5 years in a row. And I think that
now it's back to Firebird. It kind of got away from, they had some Indian ground issues, some Senate votes and whatnot, but it seems to be pretty steady. But much like Gainesville, right? Like there's a few tracks that, if it starts raining or if you're delayed as many hours as we were on Sunday of Gainesville, that people are going to bounce, get out of there. I'll tell you, you look up, we're running first round at 3:00 on Sunday. I don't think a single person left.
Well, you can't get out of the parking lot in Gainesville. You're either stuck in mud or in a ditch or the traffic.
That's true.
So you're better off just staying there.
Phoenix is kind of the same way though. That place is always packed. The sellout of the last year, the sellout of it coming straight back, but it's always been that way. I don't think that this is our last hurrah, as we joke in our pit, our Jeg Coughlin retirement speech that came about for them. But that place is always absolutely insane. Even as I was in the green room, I'm distributing our tickets to our sponsors and stuff. This is always one of our heaviest races, and the weather is, dare I say, looking like it's going to be good, and it's going to be warm.
Phoenix is another one that, to Mike's point, that has a badass local fan base. I mean, those are the guys that camp out. I got some friends that like literally rent a U-Haul truck every year, one of the big like 20-footers, and build a platform in it. They go to Home Depot, buy some wood, some lumber, and build like a platform to make sure the roof is sturdy, and then they back it up to the fence and use the top as like a party deck. And it's like, U-Haul probably doesn't know that's what this vehicle is being used for, but that's exactly what it should be used for.
That's awesome.
But that's awesome stuff, right? I mean, that some of these tracks, it's cool to see. I feel like we're getting that in Bradenton, where there are people that it's a pilgrimage. They go there every year. They come every year. And I mean, I can't wait to see what the future holds, because I can't wait till there's going to be a time in the not so near future when that entire Freedom Factory field is the Winter Series campground and people are camping out there for weeks or months at a time. I mean, and I think that's coming sooner rather than later. It's exciting, man. It really is. What's the big juice in the NHRA world right now? Courtney, what are the big storylines that you're seeing? Mud flaps.
Yeah.
This was
this weekend.
Mud flaps.
I didn't even know what they were talking about. Whenever I got the press release, I screenshotted it and sent it to Mike. And I said, what are Top Fuel mud flaps? And he's like, it's the canard wings in front. I'm like, that doesn't even sound like, I wouldn't have used the phrase mud flap.
I did not say canard.
I will say,
you said it's the little wings.
I said it's that deal that's like in front of the tires, and they ran it on Brittany's car when she ran 302. And then Nate quickly sourced a photo from the dark web and showed us that they were testing without.
We call it the Nitro dark web.
Yeah,
Nate was John Force Racing.
Yeah. Oh well, we like to give Nate credit on some stuff. If there's some kind of drama or rumor or anything going around, Nate's got evidence on it.
No, that's
historically mud flaps behind the tire.
Yes.
was gonna say, kind
I
of
don't think I would have
inverted.
called it mud flaps.
Yeah, and honestly, I didn't think that that was the real name. I thought that that's just something that
Me
we
either.
scoundreled through the pits, and then when they said it on the official press release, I was a bit
That
taken
was
back
interesting,
too.
right? It's like,
Yeah.
do you want to call them canards on the press release? No, just call them mud flaps.
just
No
call
one's
'em mud
gonna,
flaps.
no one in drag racing knows what a
Like
canard
a
is.
tire
There's no mud
spoiler.
on the track. There's
Like a
no
tire
water on the
spoiler or
track.
something, you know, like,
yeah,
yeah,
anything
I
else
don't
would
know.
have been cool.
Yeah,
I know a
I would
couple
like
of
to know the
teams-
history of those things. Like, where did they come up? Like, who first started running them? Where did
Don
they
Garlitz would know.
originate? I'm sure. And like
tire
why
valves,
did they
yeah.
why are they suddenly now under scrutiny? And I guess
Right.
we'll find out more. But that was
Well,
the whole
and my thing is, because I don't know enough about these cars, right? I've never claimed to be a nitro junkie by any
You
means.
better figure it out. Your
Yeah, I
boyfriend's
know.
running one. Shit.
I know.
How do you spell
She just
canard?
closes her eyes. She just
I
closes
do.
her
I
eyes and
do.
does
I
this
close my eyes.
the whole
Bah.
run. And then yeah.
So,
It's
but
good
Johnny
just down
Lindbergh-
the aisle.
Johnny Lindbergh told me I
Oh,
looked really
got it.
nervous the other day. I was like, yeah, this is just how I look now. But I don't know if, there's safety, if it was like Mike, you said in our group the other day about, the tire shanking stuff, like what's going to be, because every rule, as you were talking about rules when I came on, right? Every rule that's come about, there's been some reason, whether it was complaint, safety issue, speed issue, whatever, to try and control these things. So if they were put in place for a reason, like what's the pressure of getting them removed? And like, is it going to be a performance increase or is it safety or whatever it may be? So honestly, in our flow meeting the other day, when we're trying to cover NHRA stuff on our social a little bit more this year, not anything on track, but just chasing these behind the scenes stories. That's one of the main prerogatives that I have, is trying to get somebody like an Antron or a Clay just very candidly explain in, our form of like why they called mud, all the things. And then, what's the reasoning of, and then for NHRA to come out and say, we've got a couple of races, we're going to accept feedback, all of that stuff. So I just thought it was a very interesting tech email that we got.
Yeah, I was interested. I mean, to me, I think it's cool, and I love seeing. I mean, Brittany Force went 302 in the 8th mile with it, so there's perhaps something to it. I've read a lot about people saying that it'll could be contributing to chunking tires more so than was previously realized, and that the wing itself provides plenty of downforce, that it's not necessarily needed. I am anxious to see how many people jump on it. I do think that Nitro's in a place right now where it's pretty monkey see, monkey do. So I do think that if, one or two of the front running teams show up without it, I venture to say we're going to see everybody adopt that pretty quickly. But it is an interesting thing, and I didn't know what spurred it other than the fact that apparently they let Brittany test without it in Gainesville, and the results were promising, I suppose. So
yeah, there was some talk about it preseason too with our deal in Bradenton at the pro race, and people during testing. Obviously, we went NHRA tech rules this year, but it was a big conversation that week as well, and that was really the first time that I had even, like we all did, paid more attention to it. But then when John Force Racing posted that picture of Brittany with the record, it was so weird. Like, again, I don't dissect these things, but I'm like, something looks weird. Like it looked old school and until we were talking about using that picture, I'm like, oh my God, you dumbass. The monster mud flaps aren't even there. So
yeah, the only thing that's going to suck about it is they don't look as cool.
Yeah, they don't look as cool, and it's less like signage for your sponsor too.
But like, if they come back, if they're required to come back and this doesn't pan out to be that way, I feel like this could be like a whole new about face for these mud flaps and how they're used too, because now
who's on the mud flap this weekend?
Yeah, all of us average Joes know they're called mud flaps, and then be like Double O Shit Show making that funny post about them on the back. I just feel like now there'd be a little bit more of a like, oh yeah, I want my company name on the mud flap.
Oh yeah, like Napa.
It's
make it actually look like the truckers. Yeah,
I think it could be a thing.
It's a whole thing in the sponsorship world between Top Fuel and Funny Car. I don't know if you guys have ever heard this. Like when let's say you've got a big sponsor, maybe it's not as big of a deal today, but like in the heyday, let's say the 90s or 2000s, a lot of companies wanted to be on a Funny Car because you get more real estate with the branding. And so Top Fuel cars are already pretty limited on branding real estate. Now you've taken away one more pretty prominent chunk of it. So that's kind of a consideration.
It is. It's interesting. That's for sure. Scott Malpass is asking if it helps prevent tire failure. And I do think that, Scott, that's like
they're having
driving
the rear
force behind this
too. Yeah. Like we saw with Austin Prock, which I don't know if that's like a nitro wide thing or whatever, but I think you're seeing more like that is all of a sudden becoming the weak link. rear end itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, no shit, right?
Yeah.
Like what an ongoing issue that has been. And it's
Kind
cool.
of
I know I talked to Jeff Stange a lot, and they were like working day and night at Strange Engineering to like create the next, top fuel rear end and what's going to solve the issues that some of those guys are having. But no, I was interested to see kind of how the season started. I was looking at car count specifically in the nitro categories because I feel like Pro Stock's in a really good spot right now. It's like sustainable. There's new people coming in. There's a lot of the legacy guys are still involved. It was great when Jeg Jr. got back in a car. I think guys like him are difference makers. They're important. You still got some of the old guard that even, Erica and Greg are kind of part of now, but we are seeing these fresh faces. Matt Latino is going to make his debut coming up. Corey Reed, I think, is just clearly showing that he's got he's going to be in the winner's circle in very near future. And a lot of the other young guns, Aaron Stanfield, Dallas Glenn, the list goes on. And we've seen, fresh faces, Camry Caruso, Sienna, Wild Gus making a couple, Brandon Foster. I mean, there's a slew of them, but I've looked at Top Fuel and Funny Car kind of through that lens for the last several years of just the participation, what are they getting on a consistent basis? And I figured there would be 20 plus cars in both those categories. What do you hear like in the lay of the land? I mean, it wasn't that long ago that Elite Motorsports was talking about a Top Fuel team at some point in the future. And I heard other people, but it seems like that tide has shifted a little bit.
Well, that tide, we can talk frankly on the Wes Buck Show. That tide was constructed by Richard Freeman. So we had all of this, maybe here, maybe there, just kind of making 5-year plans-ish. And long story short, it's 4th of July. I'm literally on a Donald Trump float in the middle of a pool in California. And I get all these text messages about Erica going fuel racing. So we kind of had to address it a little sooner than we wanted to because Richard it out and talked on the Joe Costello show, which was cool. But there was a lot of deciding factors that went into that. One, can't run 2 professional categories. We went to bat, tried to prove, they sent me on the scooter. We had a time clock going of how long it would take switching suits, maybe even getting a suit that would work for both, yada, yada. Didn't really get that. And then also just the availability of getting new cars, new trucks and trailers. This is going to sound crazy, but we were a year and a half out of getting the tools that we needed to be able to do it. And so I don't know what Richard ended up doing. If we have cars on order, if we've got, he's always got things on order.
No,
but
you know what he's done? He's switched all that. It's all been reallocated to Pro Mod. After the Winter Series,
honestly,
Richard's done with Nitro. We're on to Pro Mod. And I saw Erica making a lot of posts about how driving that Scott Tidwell 69 Camaro was the most fun she's had drag racing.
It was.
And she's already missing that thing. So
I haven't seen Erica like that in 8 years. Like what we do is awesome. And this is what she was born to do and all the things, but it's work and it's monotonous. And she has this endless carrot that she has to chase. And if you know her personally, like it's never good enough. You got to go, but it's like, Erica, you've won almost 50 races. You got 6 championships. Like take a second. She took that serious bone off and y'all all saw it at World Series of Pro Mod. She was joking around him-hawing at the chip draws, talking shit to Steve King. Like it was awesome. And I haven't seen her have that much fun. And I'm not going to say anything too crazy here, but she may or may not be in another state on a day trip handling some business to maybe be able to run that thing again. So
bam.
Yes.
Good. No, and for me, that's like, this, the dream realized is having all these people like going. I love like Steve King winning the race was such an incredible story because I love that he's just like the funniest, laid back, cool dude, old school drag racer, drive it like you stole it guy. Like I'm a huge fan, but it's great to be able to see, like when I was watching the video that Jess Malante did for us, recapping Steve, so good. Geez, Louise, Steve, even hearing him talk about getting to race Erica, and getting and knowing that that's something that all these guys experience. They know who Antron Brown is. They know what he's accomplished in Top Fuel, which has for the longest time been the absolute kings of our sport. And to see all these people from different communities come into one place, it's an absolutely awesome thing. And I'm sure it's fun for Erica to get to see somebody else. You know what I mean? Like she's raced Greg Anderson 1,000 times and Jason Lyon and all these people that she's gone head to head with for years, which is magic. It's a great thing. Don't get me wrong, but it is cool to see her in a different community, She would kill me for saying this, but it's so funny. If you've ever watched the show Veep, like
she has this bag boy. It's called Gary the Bag Boy. And he walks by and whispers everyone's name that she's talking to. I'm Gary the Bag Boy for Eric Anders. And so we're up at the chip draw, right? She knows all these names and all these cars, but she's not been around these races like we have. So she was leaning on me every time somebody go, who's that? Who's that? What car do they drive? What power hour is that? And it was so funny. And so a couple of the guys that she drew early on, before she went up, she goes, do we like them? Like, she just had no idea of the vibe of it. It was kind of cool to, like, you know, she's been doing this her whole life, but it's been so tunnel vision, and every single race and every single thing is exactly the same, with just a slight different outcome. So it was kind of cool to see her vulnerable, and whenever she would draw somebody that she like knew, I know that.
I know that happens with
really
a lot more people than what we think. You know, I guess we take it for granted because we're around it a lot. But Brett Underwood, you know, who's done most of the stuff in NHRA.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't realize probably that he didn't know a lot of these pro mod guys.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, after one or two races, he goes, JT, I need to go with you sometime so you can like introduce me to these people. And I was like, what? You know, I just we assume.
Well, it's weird because
Jimmy Dale was the same way. You know, he hung out for a week in that first race.
Yeah. There's some
it does because everybody's very friendly and outgoing, and it doesn't take long to kind of get the lay of the land. Well, I mean, I really do 80
think
cars this time, so that took a little more work probably.
It did, but it is interesting because I think it brings to light like just the ultimate point is that this sport, like, there's so many great people, so many great things happening, but you'd be blown away like how significant the tunnel vision is that exists for each of those pockets of people. Right. I mean, I remember even in the infancy of the pro superstar shootout in year one, when we were deeply involved, it's like, I couldn't get over how many of these Top Fuel and Funny Car guys didn't know one another, and certainly didn't know anybody in the pro stock ranks.
Oh yeah.
You know, and it was like, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, dude, these guys don't even, like, they race the same class and they're not even.
Your lives are like this, you know, you service while we run, we service while you run. And it's absolutely crazy. And now with Spencer's deal, like, I'm having to do both, and it's so crazy. I'm seeing guys that, like, I used to live in Brownsburg, Indiana, and we lived in like crew guy condo haven over there, and like neighbors that I hadn't seen literally except on Facebook, and we're at the same exact place every single weekend because they work on a nitro car.
Yeah, you never see them. You know,
never, which is crazy.
And I think that, like, obviously, like, and I don't mean to beat on these things, but I do think that, like, we talk about the chip draw at World Series, at the Drag Illustrated Winter Series events a lot. But when I think of those, I think a lot of people look at it and it's like, oh, it's this great equalizer and it's about the competition. For me, it's more about getting all these people under a tent at one time as often as I can, getting these people to interface, make them. You know, because if the chip draw was optional and you didn't have to go up there and anybody could draw for you or whatever, we wouldn't have the participation. But it's mandatory. You've got to be up there. You got to be up there 15 minutes
party,
after
the strange party on Thursday.
All those things, getting this group of people together.
Look how much better that party was this year, or this last race. Everybody was up there. Of course, we had the practice tree shootout at the same time, but you know, sometimes it felt like it was like pulling teeth to get people to just step out of their comfort zone and have fun.
But now they start to look forward to it. And that's like I told Vic Alvarez from Bradenton Motorsports Park, and I talked about it a lot. Like I said, hey, we're doing the party at all the races, whether it's well attended or not. Because if we don't do it, it'll never be well attended. We've got to do it. You know, we've got to do it. We've got to train them to know that there's going to be a party on Thursday night. There's going to be a get together on Friday night. There's going to be this, there's going to be that. And it's like building these things and just sticking with them. Just sticking to, like, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. And eventually they'll bite. And I do think we've got buy-in right now because I think this group of people, like, the opportunities to keep people racing are going to come from Steve King meeting somebody at that chip draw or one of the parties that maybe he ends up doing business with. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden he's making some money doing this deal with that guy, or Richard Freeman selling a trailer to one of these racers, all these different things. That's what keeps this thing going. We've got to make sure guys we're creating opportunities for commerce and creating opportunities for relationships to be built. And that's a really, really important part of this thing. So
talking about keeping it going and meeting some of these people, or seeing the people that you race against a lot, we're diving into the PDRA season in just a couple of weeks at Galat. So Wes and I are actually going to be there. We're going to take the place of Nate, who is still on paternity leave, which it could be indefinite at this point. We're not sure. We got to see. We got to see when he's coming back, but that's going to be exciting. I guess we'll see you guys there. So what are you looking for, for the PDRA season? Like what's the big story going into Galat?
Well, for me, the big story going into Galat is we're going to be working with Tyler. I don't know if I can really say who else on the media side's coming, but we've got some special appearances coming to make sure that we are giving the drivers an availability to become these stars that we've been talking about, right? The racing is perfect. I say this at an NHRA race. Am I lagging? I say
Just
this
slightly. It'll fix. You're fine.
Canada and stuff. I say this at an NHRA race that the PDR racing is the best racing in the country. Well, now we're going to be doing a mock media day of, being able to collect tools, not only make the media day fun for these drivers, but collect tools and assets that we need for the flow stream, for you guys to be able to cover these events, for the teams to be able to use and all of that. So right now we're working in a pretty tight group to be able to do that. And I'm very excited about that because I don't think the PDRA has ever been treated to their drivers in a sense of that kind of professionalism. And I don't mean that in any way because racing is the priority over there and it always has been. But now that it's top tier, we're going to start making these guys and gals stars.
And it really does take a focused effort, man. I mean,
oh my gosh, it's so much.
I did it live one time. I can't remember. I think I was in like the parent pickup line or something, getting Sophia from school. And I just thought it's crazy to me how few racers have photos of themselves.
We run into it all
radio
the time. Series. We try to cover something like grassroots, and we've got no photos of the person. We're pulling stuff off Facebook, and that makes our job hard. I mean, when you're trying to print it, you need high res. It just makes it's such a barrier to entry. So even the PDRA, they do a great job with a lot of their stuff. But like to your point, what Erica was saying at the chip draw, some of these guys, some of these names, you see the cars, but you don't know what the faces. You don't know the names. You can't pair the two together. Yeah, so that's going to be a big deal for sure.
We were just talking about it. I was talking on the phone with Wes about trying to find pictures and stuff of some of these guys, and even the photographers anymore have kind of shied away from tagging the drivers when they put their albums out because, well, I mean, the algorithms. More people you tag, the less they want to put it out, I guess, right? So,
which is dumb.
So I know. So when you go to search for somebody,
all the time.
Yeah. So when you go to search for somebody, that driver doesn't necessarily pop up on the pictures that's out there of him. So
that's what's so great about the PDRA. And everybody does their own thing, but at the PDRA, you see it from the ground up. Like Tara, she makes sure she spends an entire round up there at the top end, makes them give her a thumbs up, makes them wave. Like she gets those. And
we use those a ton. I think we use like every one of those in our magazine.
Sarah so freaking much. It's crazy, but you've got to set that out to get those because we've got cars at every single racetrack. But it's funny, like joking about it, but not really joking about it. When Stevie and Steve were up there for the finals of the World Series of Pro Mod, like every other year that we've had a World Series of Pro Mod winner, we've kind of struggled to find an abundance of pictures for these guys because it's the first big race that they've won. And so I told Stevie up there, I said, Stevie, this wasn't your race to win, buddy. This is these guys that we've got to like make these careers for and build. But that's a problem that we came into of even having them on podcasts after they win that race. It's like there's 2 photos of their faces on the internet.
Yeah, right. We shoot the cover right there in the winner's circle for that reason. And you're exactly right. And Brian Loans and I actually talked about it when Steve King won. It's like I said, kind of the same thing where Stevie's the established name, he's the superstar, and yet again. Here's a Mike Bowman, a Carl Stevens, Joey Oaksis, or Scott Oaksis, I'm sorry. Guys that you don't expect. Derek Ward, Spencer is probably the best example, win this race and then go on to take that and parlay it into bigger things. So that's what I'm looking forward to see out of Steve King. But you're exactly right. It's like everybody going into that final was like, oh man, Stevie, it's going to be Stevie. It's going to be Stevie. But we all should have known something was going to happen.
Not
and it was going to be Steve King.
It's just not.
Yeah. I seen him talking about it on y'all's show on Shake and Bake. And
I straight up told him
how much you wanted that one, And hey, Courtney, did you see this? That makes you jealous?
Yeah. It sure does.
It's been this whole thing is seeing these guys embrace it. I mean, I've seen it with all of them. Spencer was probably one of the first to like really Mike Bowman in 2017 when he won the first World Series, he was a fantastic. Like he literally he did a great job of doing every interview, doing every radio thing. And that was before podcasts were really what they are today. But he would dive on any show I'd ask him to be on. And I think it's great because we've seen all of these guys embrace that part of this job. Like the racing is a big part of it, but that media side, the content creation side is equally important. I would argue it's sometimes more important. And it's great to see more and more teams investing in that, like walking around during the Winter Series. And like, it seemed like every team had a camera crew following them. And I'm like, this is what our sport needs. Like, we need more people telling this story to the masses. And because there's surely a overlap in the audiences, but there's also a lot of people that are, you know, seeing this stuff or being exposed to it for the first time. And we've got to put as much of it out there as possible. And I do.
Spencer really embraced that. You know,
really
out of everybody's
career, 1000%. Like, it didn't make him any better of a race car driver. He was winning races where he was, but that absolutely made his career. And I kind of joked when he was getting in the funny car. I'm like, I think I texted you, Wes. I'm like, God dang it, Wes Buck. This is all Wes Buck's fault. All of this is Wes Buck's fault.
You know, good for him though to take the opportunity and capitalize on that momentum. Because I mean, I guess that's what you've seen from some of the guys. Jimmy Dale, for instance, off of the Street Outlaw shows that he was on. You know,
Justin Swanstrom.
Now being a World Series, I mean, being a World Series has helped Jimmy Dale a lot too. We're gonna take some royalties off all the little gangsters we're seeing everywhere.
No kidding. Yeah, I do. While we're talking about, you just said new.
Yeah,
I want to ask
hanging right there.
I want to ask you one question, Wes. We were talking about the Bob Tasca stuff earlier. I want to hit that, but before we do, when you said new eyeballs on these series, so if I'm being vulnerable here, whenever this came out on Flo Courtney, I'm like, okay, we're gonna get subscriptions for the first one, a couple for the second, and kind of expected it to trickle off. Every single one of these, I'm looking at our deep dive here. Every single one of these events that we had went over what we had put forth for the subscriptions. And to me, of course, that's a good thing and flow, yada, yada. But I think because, not that I doubted it, but it's just a natural segue, right? Like, you buy your membership, you're going to have it for the year. I've got yada, yada races. Most of the peoples are going to renew at the beginning of the Winter Series next year. Every single one of these events, we saw thousands and thousands of more new eyeballs on it. And I just wanted to bring that up to not only y'all. I mean, I know we talked about it inside, but like, that's crazy to think about, that the market continued to grow through this series. Like, am I crazy to think that, did you guys think, you know, we're going to batch these people in and then we're just going to keep them on? The Kai Kelly thing, that obviously helped, but it doesn't change the algorithm for the next two events, but it significantly went up each and every time. And that's the first time that I've seen the off season, the greatest off season that drag racing has ever had. And that completely screwed up all of our goals and everything for Flo on the drag racing side, because now we've ended Q1 of where we pretty much ended last year. But it's
that's cool. Take the rest of the year off, Court.
Right.
Yeah, shut her down, man.
That was just something that stuck out to me when we get to these deep dive numbers of, I kind of figured there'd be a plateau. Viewership would be good, yada, yada. But those new signups just kept coming. And so I just want to tell you all that and thank you for that.
Oh, no, thank you, man. I mean, and I got to say, like, I think the job that Flow Racing did during the Winter Series was absolutely phenomenal. I couldn't have been happier with it. Like, watching it along, and whether I was in the motorhome or watching it after the fact, the clips and the replays and the highlights that were being posted on social, and the production during the event, like the drone, the jib camera, you know, having the dedicated voices, Mike and Brian Loans primarily providing play-by-play and color commentary on the live stream, but also having, you know, Al Tucci, Steve Logan, Brian Loans, you know, speaking to the audience, you know, the in-venue crowd. I'm really proud of where all of that, Don and Kayla, yourself, with all the different interviews, pits, top end, staging lanes, all the little open shots and transition shots that we did.
Live timing, live weather.
Yeah, live timing looks great.
We have weather now? Come on.
Oh, yeah. No. That was weather on there. I was loving that. JT knows I was loving that.
I love those shots. So when
I just can't believe we haven't got you to do the weather for us yet.
Oh, yeah,
I'm gonna do it for you. That's a segment at Snowbirds. Mark it down, Courtney. We're gonna do a weather segment.
I literally can't wait,
dude. I actually think that would be well received from the drag racing audience. Like, seriously, hey, we're gonna talk about
like kind of have serious, but joking and do it like a
stand up like they do with the clicker.
I would love to.
Actually, it's a great idea.
A newscast thing and got to see how that worked. Like when I was a kid, my mind's still blown as to how they like do that whole thing. You
I got
really
to see that
that,
when I was down in
hard to do.
Bradenton. I got to watch the weather report whenever I went in to do that one interview with ABC or whatever it was. And it was like, this is kind of crazy, but it was the coolest part was like seeing the guy just be so nonchalant about it. Like the local meteorologist, like he's sitting over there, like eating some French fries or whatever and playing on his phone. And then they're like, Larry, and he like hops up and walks over and, you know, points around on his screen. Yeah, it was like, oh, this is awesome.
You'd have been funny was if you could get a hold of that guy before you went on there and told him to put like rain in the forecast for the next 2 days.
No, don't do that. No.
It would nuke us. Oh, it would nuke us. We can't have. That's the hardest thing. I had this conversation like 10 years ago, 15 years ago with Steve Earwood at Rockingham Dragway, and he goes, "Dude, if there's rain in the forecast a week prior, you're done." Like, you know what I mean? Like they're checking the weather and they're making different plans.
Yeah, the weatherman is your best friend or your worst enemy for sure. But back to your point about the numbers with flow and all that stuff. I was kind of with you that like, okay, the first one, everyone wants to see what's happening here. We go out, we have Kai Kelly win it. That really carried the day. And it's like, okay, what's going to happen at US Street Nationals? And it almost like it didn't take like a Kai Kelly winning it every time. The story of the series itself and the competition, the number of cars showing up, it like kind of told its own story. Like we didn't have to have some crazy thing happen at every event.
Was the biggest, not in
which is
viewership, anything, but in signups, which tells me like that it's not the Kai Kelly effect where, you know, I think that's funny that's a phrase we will use forevermore now, but it by far, it was the highest sign up, which is like also a bit of FOMO. I'm deep diving this. I'm like, why would you sign up for the second one, not the first? Well, the internet was absolutely ablaze. So you can't not be a part of it. So I may as well sign up for a subscription. So, and most of them those
guys did a great job promoting as well.
Totally. Yeah. So I just found that really, really impressive because any other series that you see, you know, it's just like NHRA.TV, right? Like you sign up in Gainesville. I'm sure their signups through the year go down. I don't know anything about that, but that just is the way that it goes for seasons like that. So that was awesome.
No, I'm really proud of it. And it just speaks to this group of people, man. There's something really special happening here. The world is paying attention. Like whenever I think about, you know, Paul Mouhayet walking around a drag strip in Sydney, Australia on the other side of the planet, it's a different fucking day there right now. Right. I mean, it literally, and he's being, you know, he's having people stop him and congratulate him on their performance at the World Series. It's like, dude, that is exactly what we're going for. Because I think like our sport, we have historically played so small where it's like, how do we get 5,000 people here? I don't want to talk about 5,000 people. I want to talk about 50,000 people. You know what I mean? I don't want to talk about 100,000 views. I want to talk about 100 million views. Like we've got to get lots and lots of eyeballs because I don't think that's really the next step. Like I talk about this with like our internal team all the time is it's just taking this to the masses, taking what we're doing. We don't need to reinvent any of it. We don't need to start from scratch. We don't need to reinvent fire or whatever. We just have to get an increasing number of eyeballs on it because the sport sells itself. This group of people sells itself. If we can expose more people to it, but it's also, we've got to expose more people to the right part of drag racing. Cause I worry sometimes that like, you know, and I'm not like trying to talk shit, but I see these events that are really disjointed and schedule gets nuked and it's 2 a.m. or it's getting canceled or whatever. And it's like, okay, what if this is someone's first time watching drag racing? We have to be weary that like, this is what they think it is.
Right.
You know, and it doesn't have to be that way. And I think about the ticket value for a fan that bought a ticket to any of the Winter Series races. A couple times a day, you can sit down and watch pro mods go down the track for 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's crazy. If you come in and watch one session of any of those races, you got your money's worth and then some. And I think that is, you know, no leakers, no oil down, you know, no crazy drama like that, other than the drama you want. A staging duel here, a staging duel there, what have you, a wild ride here, a wild ride there. Those are part of our sport, never going to go away. But to be able to put on that type of show, like that's the type of thing we need people seeing. And my biggest concern is that they're going to go off to the next event and it's not going to be the same experience. Right. And we've got to try to find a way to just keep upping the ante across the board and improving this experience so that we when people do come out, it doesn't do more bad than good.
That's why I scream so loudly about the PDRA, because that's all they're missing there too, is the eyeballs. Once you get that chunk that you've got here to experience that and witness that, and maybe switch around the show to make it a little more consumable, that's going to be the same way.
No, it's there, and we've got strength in numbers.
You're gonna have a lot
right
more
now.
people that signed up for the Winter Series or whatever, kind of going into this PDRA season. So that should give them a bump on flow, and maybe people will, those eyeballs will show up this time. You know what I mean? I mean, that's a kind of a, you know, what's the word? Like a halo effect for these off-season races, is it kind of gives you a running start at the actual season.
Well, let me I'm big on speaking things into existence, as you guys well know. So, Courtney, as we kind of wrap up today's show, and I want to give a huge shout out to everybody that's joined us. We've got a hell of a family that kind of gathers every Wednesday afternoon to talk drag racing, and we're very grateful for it and appreciative of it. So thank you for being here. But kind of as we close, Courtney, I want to cast this vision for the future. And I've spent the last 10 days or so shopping a docuseries or a reality show surrounding the Winter Series, like an episodic show. And I really feel like at this point in time, the best play is to do it with flow. So I think, because what I want to do is I want to follow our drivers in their journeys throughout the season, right?
Yeah.
Follow these guys around wherever they may go, you know, like follow one of our radial tire racers to one of Duck's events, follow Kai Kelly or Murder Nova to one of the Street Outlaws No Prep Kings events this year, follow Jay Cox to a PDRA race, follow Mark Mickey to a Midwest drag race, or go hang out with Keith Haney and follow these stories wherever these guys go. And then the culmination of the storyline is everybody arriving back in Bradenton, and you unpack what they did throughout the year, the battles they fought, the struggles they had, and then you get to see how they fare over the course of this 3-race Winter Series, obviously culminating with the World Series of Pro Mod. And, you know, TV's in a weird place right now. There's been a lot of talk about the whole Street Outlaws, No Prep Kings thing. Well, the fact is, like, there's not a lot happening in the TV space. Like, MLB lost their deal with ESPN this week, Major League Baseball doesn't have a TV home. So it's not super surprising to me that Street Outlaws has not got a TV home right now. You know what I'm saying? And I think as the economy continues to do what it's doing, and hopefully things continue to improve and the world continues to stabilize, I do think there's going to be more opportunities. But I don't want to wait to tell the stories of these people, you know, and I want to get after it now. And I think that that's something that we need to start working on, like in the very near future,
in 2
like
weeks
tomorrow. Yeah, because we've got to tell these guys stories and make it more, add to the significance of what happens when they arrive at the Snowbirds. What have they been through that year? What challenges have they faced in their racing career, their personal lives, whatever, that's going to make someone care how they do at the Winter Series. And that's really, you know, because there's an example here, drag racing version of Drive to Survive. It really is. I mean, Drive to Survive on Netflix, but it's an interesting thing because it didn't maintain, like, Drive to Survive's first season during COVID performed really, really well. Great ratings, all this thing. Everybody's talking about it. Season 2 did a little less. Season 3 did way less. You know, season 3, did way less. So I think it's just like seeing these things as part of your marketing mix, and you don't need it to last forever, but you just need it to start the fire. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that we need to be cooking up the next, 20 season reality show. That's not what we need.
They went on a little bit different, path in their reality show. You know, they focused one show on like one driver or two drivers or whatever, and kind of went through the whole season. Then the next show, it's a different driver, and they kind of go through the whole season with them, where you're not following it like it is a reality show where, this is what's happening. Yeah. And I think it probably would do better.
Well,
I think you would probably tune in more and be follow it as far as like from episode to episode if it was going along through the whole season.
Well, I mean, you got to get people. I mean, Drag Racing Mayhem. I mean, it really is about getting people to have an emotional connection with the guy or gal driving the car. Mm-hmm. And they can't do that if it's all we're showing is slow-mo tire shake or close-ups on headers. Like, we've got to talk about these people way more often than we do. And it's like, we've got to start selling these folks as human beings, not just a part of a machine right? Like the one that's behind the wheel of the machine. And that's, I think, the way that we do that and tell those stories. And maybe it's as simple as like, we all go hang out, like, hey, we're going to go race with Scott Palmer this weekend, whatever that looks like.
Look at what,
you know?
what
Did
Flo does.
did you see my door?
That
Yeah,
is pretty cool.
it's pretty cool, but it's also sad.
Like what Flo does with the Road to Eldora, what they did with the Road to Pro. They do one lap, one beer with Derek Kessinger. Like they've got these established things that's where it started in the dirt world for them. And now they're on season 2 of Dirt, which debuted the other day, which was absolutely insane. But I think that's a good way to start these. You know, we dive into the personal stuff, like again last year when we cooked with Austin Prock, or you know, we do a cribs tour, things like that, and you almost have to like just kind
Race
of
the
jump back
tractors.
and punt.
Yeah.
You don't have to same thing. You don't have to reinvent anything. You don't have to go, you know, God bless him for it. I wish we could drag boat on a racetrack in a hurricane flood, but just getting to know these people behind it, and then it goes from there. And we've seen a huge increase in general interest, and even in the comments of like, well, I, you know, like Austin because he cooks, or Antron drives a Lexus, so I like this, and whatever.
Well, and we're clearly dedicated to turning Matt Hagan into a cowboy. Like, we are committed to turning him into a cowboy.
He's
I've raced tractors with him.
Right. But I mean,
I know
it
you
is
did.
like, I'm here for it,
That
right?
was
I'm here
crazy.
for it. You know, I'm absolutely.
That looked pretty
here for
fun,
it.
actually.
It honestly was. We didn't really know what we were getting into, and we just kind of rolled.
Those are cool things though. When you guys do stuff like that, it's like it breaks up the monotony of everything else, you know.
And you're able to integrate a partnership, like with Mahindra
Yeah.
Tractors. Like if you don't think that was absolutely core based for that, and Matt and I just got to ride along with it. But I think that's something that's very, very doable through this year as we go through PDRA, even our NHRA friends who come back to the Winter Series and things like that.
Yeah, like we need to go spend a weekend with Spencer as he embarks on his funny car career, you know, and tell that story of like, here's a guy who had been racing for years and years and years with considerable success, had done well for himself, then overnight, like, goes into becoming this household name in drag racing, so to speak. And now he is racing in the NHRA funny car, like staging up alongside Ron Capps. I mean, this is like it's a fantastic story of what can happen, you know, and those stories need to be told. And the problem I think that we all struggle with, I struggle with this myself, because I'll even like apologize as I repeat something, but we all act as if these things get made and said once and everybody hears it.
Yeah.
They don't. You have to say it over and over and over and over. Like, how many times did John Force tell us that he was a broke truck driver? 10 million times, you know, and there were people that are like, God, I'm tired of this story. Yeah, but someone else is hearing it for the first time and in finding out that they like this guy, not because of how good of a driver he is or how good of a light he cuts, blah, 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 how many champions he has, because he started out as a broke truck driver just like they are right now, you know, or whatever. And I think that we are, I know that I'm hesitant because like I said, I'll apologize or be self-deprecating. Like, oh, I hate to beat on this. You have to beat on it. You have to talk about it all the time. There's billions of people on the planet. You can't expect them all to see everything you say or do. So you got to be willing to say it a lot. And
I've never heard him apologize for repeating the same thing. JT,
I do it every week. I'm like, I know I've beaten.
He just does it. He just does it with no apologies from what I can tell.
Oh,
he said it under. Yeah, he must have just said it to himself.
But hey, last thing, closing notes. I just want to say thanks. Alex Laughlin hooked me up with his brand new AL40 Dixon flannel. I figured I'd
Wes
wear it on the show.
Tool time.
I figured it would be more of an issue from JT. I figured I'd get a lot of tool time references or whatever. But I got to tell you,
Wes Borland. Wes Borland is the dude from.
He's the lead guitarist of Limp Bizkit.
Yeah,
which is way cooler.
I use one of each of their names, so
Al Borland.
I can do that.
Al Borland, Al Borland.
Limp Bizkit is like experiencing a resurgence of popularity.
They all are. All those divorced dad bands is what they're calling them.
I was behind you on that, JT. I got you.
I do want to do one little selfless promotion here. Something very exciting at the NHRA race for me this weekend is I'm going to be a part of the NHRA Insider podcast with Brian Loans and them talking about the NHRA play. So you can catch that on, it'll be streaming on their YouTube channel, or just come over in Phoenix on the stage there. I am so excited, but feel so out of place to be able to be on stage with Brian Loans talking drag racing. So I'm very, very excited.
He'll do fine.
You'll
pretty
kill
used to it by now, I'd say.
Yeah, but it's different. We were talking about like pro mod's my world, my life, and it all is, but that's where people trust me to speak. I've never really been allowed to speak on this stuff on the big stage. So I'm very, very excited about that. This is my first weekend with the NHRA.
Yeah,
it'll be exciting, man. I actually love
and
this
that whole
approach.
deal they've
I
got
love
going.
seeing all these personalities.
This whole
It's
NHRA
fantastic.
TV thing that they're doing, like the expanded deal, having you and that whole host of people kind of like
David
augmenting that
Freiberger,
show.
Al
They did
Tucci, like
such
these
a
are
great
great
job.
things.
Like that setup they had up there during qualifying, you could see it down on the starting line because the Gainesville glass tower. But it was so cool. You've got Jordan Vandergriff, David, and Brian Loans up there doing NHRA.TV. So it's not this segregated situation where, you know, Joe's on the starting line here and Galvin's up here and so-and-so's up top end. Everything's going to be rotating, and you're going to get some stuff with Outta this weekend, who she's doing some stuff for him. And I think it's going to be really cool to get that. And they're getting a little frisky letting people like me and David on the mic.
I think it's exciting. It's a good thing, man. The NHRA needed that, like, just to freshen up there. Like, I mean, even like nothing against anybody that was involved. Like, even if Alan Reinhart was like woven in, but I like seeing this diverse cast of characters, because it is, you never know who's gonna one of y'all might get a hook in some people that others wouldn't. So it's a good thing.
I don't think it was necessarily about Alan. I think what they were previously doing was kind of just like taking that audio. It's like what we did with Flow. Like they were just taking the track audio, piping it into the streaming, and they realized there's another level to this, that we could make this better and actually produce a show for the streaming deal. And I think it's awesome, because I honestly never watched the actual Fox show. I don't know if that's bad to admit, but like I'm watching it while I'm working. I've got NHRA TV on like the whole weekend. So I don't have a need to watch the Fox deal.
Yeah,
so,
I watch it live.
Yeah.
I've got to know. Well, and I also don't want to like be behind when somebody texts me, did you see this or that? Like, I need to watch it as it's happening. Last thing, guys, Dana Turner asking about my dad. He's same story. Unfortunately, I don't have any great news to report. I know I haven't said anything about it, but it's been it's tough to. There's not a lot to say right now, unfortunately. So, but thank you so much for asking it. I appreciate it more than you know. What else do we have? Good luck. Thank you very much. Freiberger is the best addition they've added. I can't argue with that. I think he's it's been an interesting thing just to hear a different perspective. So guys, thank you all so much for joining us. Remember, NHRA Arizona Nationals going down this weekend at the newly renamed Firebird Raceway outside Phoenix, Arizona. We also are a week away from the start of the PDRA season. Can't wait to be out there amongst all of our door slammer brethren. But thank you all for being a part of this deal. Courtney, Mike, JT, Paul Mouhayet, John Salemi, thank you guys for joining the show today and spending your afternoon with us right here on the Drag Illustrated YouTube channel. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.